everybody, Patrick Connor here, and welcome to the Knuckles and Gloves podcast. It's boxing history time, so I'm here with my buddy Aris Pina, CompuBox operator and fellow fight history file. Aris, what's up, man? How are you?
Everything's good, my friend. How are you?
Doing all right, dude. You know, I'm always hyped to do the history shows, bro. And we got a good, admittedly, it is a very poignant, sad, kind of a cautionary tale type of subject, but nonetheless, a good in terms of being interesting subject and something that's very, it encompasses a lot of stuff that fight fans are regularly talking about, even to this day, even to like this week. So in any case, the Quarry family, the Quarry brothers specifically, Jerry Quarry and Mike Quarry, very specifically. It's a crazy, crazy tale. It's a very, typical boxing tale, unfortunately, but that's what we're here to talk about today, man.
To be honest, bro, I'm surprised it's actually taking us this long to do a feature on them,
That's
considering
true.
what we've been doing. I don't know. It's one of those they're the Quarries are one of those type of families, or just specifically Jerry and Mike, like they're saying, that they're talked about enough that it's almost forgotten that, like, we've mentioned them on the shows and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just almost passed my mind to actually do a feature on it, but. I've been watching some Jerry Quarry footage this past week. Also, Mike Quarry. Doing some more research just in general, and realized, we actually haven't really done a deep dive on them yet, and better time than ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they had very eventful lives and careers. I mean,
Very.
sad endings for both of them, unfortunately, Jerry and Mike. But nonetheless, like I said, a cautionary tale in a lot of ways. And I think a way to demonstrate that while we talk about the fact that a lot of things in boxing have not changed and that ultimately boxing still is the same kind of thing now that it was then, there are some things that have changed, and many of them for the better overall. And so, we'll talk about some of that kind of stuff today. But like we were saying before we started recording, Jerry Quarry, Irish Jerry Quarry, Bellflower Bomber, depending on, however you're gonna nickname the guy. Even to this day, very popular whenever there's social media stuff about Jerry Quarry, or whatever there's a discussion about fighters who never won titles, a discussion about, the heavyweights from other eras who were kind of like normal in their era but would kick ass now, that type of shit. Jerry Quarry always figures big into those conversations.
Dude, Corey remains one of the most popular fighters just in general. If you go to the Boxing Hall of Fame, I can't tell you over the years how many countless people have come up to me, massive Jerry Corey fans, and they're like, "So, do you think Jerry Corey belongs in the Hall of Fame?" Put you on the spot right away. And usually I'll tell him straight up. I wouldn't make him a Hall of Famer. It doesn't mean I don't love him. I'm a massive Jerry Corey fan. A tragic figure and all, but just if you watch his fights, you can't help but be a fan of him. You know what I mean? He had a great personality too. Before everything unfolded later on in his life, if you listen to his earlier interviews, how articulate he really was, extremely smart, had a very high IQ, could sing, did great in person, just all around good guy. And that doesn't mean, it's not wrong that I wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't put Mickey Ward in the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Everybody loves him too. But like Corey just holds this image about himself because he was, a tough, you got to say it, a white guy in the toughest era in heavyweight history. And he held his own with most of them. And he fought toe to toe with the absolute best and always showed that he was a warrior in the ring. Like, he just fondly remembered. Either you're from that era or you learned about him afterwards because your parents talked about him as fight fans or whatever. Generally, Jerry Quarry is always held in high favor and high regard for everybody.
He One of the biggest reasons why he and some other fighters that are often recommended for the Hall of Fame, sometimes in our opinion incorrectly, is that they fought a who's who of fighters from their era. And in
Mhm.
Jerry Quarry's specific, him specifically as an example, in his case, he fought the who's who of like an era and a half or
Yeah.
so. And it was an extremely good era and a half, if not the best, one of the best, maybe the second best. And so when you're able to hang with everybody from that era, pretty much nobody embarrassed him. You know, nobody was just like beating the ever loving crap out of him and treating him like trash. Obviously, there were
Even when he
fighters.
was getting whooped up, he was still hanging in there and making for
Yeah,
memorable
there were
moments.
fighters who outclassed him, obviously, but they wasn't like they just discarded him like he was nothing.
No.
He was always a formidable opponent. And when you're able to hang in there with that many good fighters, it says a lot about you. And so that's a big reason why people are, I need him in the Hall of Fame. I want him in the Hall of Fame. And I
Totally.
get it.
And his
You,
resume actually with win losses with the era you just mentioned, it holds very highly with a lot of people who are in the Hall of Fame. But the only reason why they're ahead, more modern and champion, yada yada yada. But like, so his resume does hold up. I just have different standards. Why everybody, I guarantee you, there are a lot of people who vote for the Hall of Fame that would say, "Hey, I would definitely vote for Jerry Quarry."
quick question. Actually, I didn't even think about this till right now. Was Jerry Quarry in the Rings Hall of Fame before they did International Boxing Hall of Fame?
To be honest, I'm not actually sure. I never
Hmm.
thought about that.
Because it's like as you were talking
We'll
about
look that
that,
up.
I
You made me
almost like,
more
well,
curious.
I'll go off while you look on that. But
Yeah.
as you were talking about that, I thought about that because I was like, now there's been enough time between his, actual career and the start of the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990, because he was still technically active at that time, but obviously as a, absolutely shot. But there was, quite a bit of time between his actual career and the start of the National Boxing Hall of Fame. Whereas now, some more
Doesn't
recent
look like it.
fighters, hmm, some
Doesn't
more
look like
recent fighters who are kind of like on his level, or like you said, around his level, or wins or losses or whatever, kind of comparable, have been inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I mean, it's kind of seems like a recency bias or whatever, but in any case,
total recency bias. They want popularity. They want people to go there. So they got to switch things up and make it
it
more
seems
fresh.
that way, and there's no accusations, no soreness here. I get it, but still, it does kind of make you think. And anyhow, like when it comes to Jerry Quarry, dude, like we got to go back to the beginning. We got to go back to where this all began and why this story winds up being cautionary and winds up being somewhat of a typical story in boxing, or a stereotypical story, is that it all starts with the patriarch of this family, Jack Quarry, the father of these several sons, these Irish Quarry sons. He's a dude who, it's almost like he's an unreliable narrator in his own story. Like you don't know whether to trust what he's saying based on the things you know about him later on that he did. And so when according to him, according to Jack Quarry, his name was James, but he went by Jack. He was from Texas and did some kind of, I want to say, sharecropping or some other kind of like, with all due respect, kind of lower level in terms of socioeconomic rung farming. And that he had, according to him, started riding the rails and became a hobo, and was basically, a rail riding hobo tough guy who lived in this shadowy world, as he told it, where people were getting knifed here and killed there and strangled here and fucking pitched off the fucking train here and all sorts of shit. I mean, the guy had definitely had the gift of Irish, excuse me. Apparently I got the gift of Irish fucked up throat. He had the gift of Irish storytelling for sure.
Listen to this one. He said, when I was 14, he told People magazine, I chopped cotton for $1 a day in Roswell, New Mexico. You can go out on Sunday and fight 3 rounds for $3. That was 3 days' work.
And who's going to double check anything? Who's going to fact check shit? Who's going to call up?
Especially from that era, because he comes from an era when people were like you said, the workers and going from one
Yeah,
place
where's
to
your
another.
references, Jack?
Yeah.
I'm gonna need some references, bro.
Just traveling around, you can't really fact check a gold end because that was such a Wild West era. You know what I mean?
And there are other fighters too, some other like classic era fighters, Stanley Ketchel probably being the most prominent, who was a rail rider or rode the rails, as they say. Jack Dempsey's more famous. He probably more famous for being a rail riding hobo.
Well, yeah, everybody, like most Dempsey historians will always call him a hobo in the early days. But Ketchel also had that monkey ear too.
Yeah, well, and Ketchel would have been before Dempsey, but regardless,
Yes.
we're getting lost in our own fucking,
But yeah, it sounded like
historical
you're
fantasies here.
But this is the thing, like you said, he
We're
was
just
traveling
flexing.
around. He got married at a very young age as well, and pretty soon, you know, just ragtagging with his kids. All he knew, what he said, was just fighting and just trying to find work where he could. There was no stability in the Quarry family, clearly.
Right. And you can, well, and here's the thing, dude, is that even if those stories aren't true, whether they're true or not is like, doesn't even matter. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? Because it's like, if they're true, then the guy went through some shit and he's probably a little, because he fucking went through some shit. And if it's not true, he's a little, because he's making up this fucking story and telling people. So either way, you know, the bottom line is that these Quarry kids are in trouble, bro. These Quarry kids are growing up in an environment where either a dude came from a real fucking weird and rough life or is a straight up sociopath. And I mean,
It's
some of
probably borders on both. It's probably, you know, just kind of in between right
the
there.
shit that happens later, it's really, who knows? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
So
but
yeah, you know, like that's kind of sets the stage for the fighting and the violence and like this life into fighting. And according to him, he had done some sort of amateur fighting or some sort of, you know, like I said, it's really difficult to know what's the truth. But according to him, that's how this all started. This rough life of violence and fighting.
that was the thing, man. He said that he had some kind of ailment that, you know, didn't allow him to turn pro, but that's all he did on his downtime. He fought everywhere. He just wanted to be a boxer. He had, man, to show how much of a roughneck he was. He had really crude and really crude tattoo across his knuckles. Hard luck. All right. And as we were talking before the show started, man, back then, dudes, most people didn't get tattoos at all. All right. Unless you were like in the military or you did something or another. Most guys didn't get tattoos. All right. The fact that Jack Quarry was going around, probably did it himself or had one of his little hobo buddies out there just scrabbled out on his knuckles because it was there. You'll find photos of it. It's as bad as you think it could look. And this is the type of person we're talking about. So all he wanted to do, he had nothing going on in his life. But when he had his kids, all he could do, the only thing he said he knew how to teach them was boxing. That was it. He knew nothing else. All he knew how to do was work in the fields or whatever he could find work, and he knew fighting. So when he had Jerry, when he had the oldest brother James, who didn't become a fighter, and then eventually Mike, that's what he was going to teach them. They're all going to be fighters whether they liked it or not.
Yeah, there was excuse me, a bunch of like sayings and stuff like that that Jack would say, you know, there's no quit in a quarry. You know, if you're a quarry, you don't
That was the
quit.
main one. That was the main one. There's no quit in a quarry because, as we'll discuss later on the show, that became the main tagline for basically their incomplete downfall up until the very end.
Almost all of these kind of things that he would say. You know, there were some kind of rare moments actually. And we'll get to this in a minute, but there were some rare moments where he would say things that were not callous or kind of crazy sounding, but usually they were hyper masculine, that kind of the stuff that you see in the gyms. I mean, frankly, you know, you can never quit, got to go out on your shield, you know, you're gonna fucking die, you know, regardless of your mental health or whatever the fuck's going on in your life, dude, you better go out there and kill yourself or something. And that's the kind of environment that he was raising these boys in. And so Jerry, well, you brought up James and Jimmy Quarry,
The oldest
the
brother.
the eldest brother, was himself an amateur fighter, and by most accounts a pretty good amateur fighter. He was like about a year or so older than Jerry, but he never wound up turning pro. However, he according to him was the only person to ever give Jerry a 10 count. We'll get to their other shenanigans later too, but he said in the amateurs he and Jerry fought and that he knocked Jerry clean out, and he was the only person to ever do so. But I mean, getting
There's the thing too, to add to I don't one more thing about the dad Jack Quarry, to add to this perspective about how funky this family could be. There was another thing, you don't know if it's true or not, but this was relayed by many people in the family. Jack denied it, but the other kids didn't. um in a KO magazine article, and I want to say around 95, 96, when this was like when Corey's condition really started coming out, because there was like a lot of news reels and
Reggie Dunlap, are you listening?
yeah. um it was when Corey, you know what it was? Corey got inducted into the West Coast Boxing Hall of Fame, I think, or the World Boxing Hall of Fame, whatever it was. Like, so he got inducted over there, and that's when there was like a lot of news stories and people visiting to find out, because they, that's when it really came out that hey, he's in really bad shape. Plus, they needed money. You know what I mean? Corey was only getting a stipend of few like 600 something bucks a month, whatever it is. But anyways, they did KO magazine did a whole story on the entire family, the tragedy of the Quarry family from beginning to the end, all this stuff, right? And one of the stories they told about in the beginning of it, and I remember reading this as a kid, and I was like, holy shit, is James Quarry, like you said, an amateur fighter, but a person who kind of stayed away from, fighting if he didn't have to. I guess got into a confrontation with someone at school or wherever it was and walked away from the fight. And as he got home and then his dad found out about it, Jack Quarry apparently, allegedly, had James stripped down and then he forced him to wear his sister's diapers and put on a bassinet or something and then have a baby bottle and walk around the family sucking the bottle and repeating over and over, I'm not a quarry, I'm a quitter. I'm not a quarry, I'm a quitter. That's what, allegedly happened. I tend to believe it probably did. It seems like something Jack Quarry probably would have been up to if he was, to teach them a lesson. But and that would be something that's a pretty crazy story just to come up with you on your own. You know what I mean? So, anyways, he said that, and then James Quarry said that Jerry, who was young, walked up to him and told him afterwards, "That's something that'll never happen to me." But that just gives you a perspective of how these kids were raised, what was going on in their life, and basically how their brains were warped and shaped early on.
Well, and I guess that's fairly prescient on Jerry's part because he wasn't lying.
Absolutely.
And that also, I think, sets a lot of the stage for the motivation behind a lot of what Jerry did as a fighter and as a person.
Totally.
And I mean, this is our own kind of like psychoanalysis here. Neither of us are psychologists, psychiatrists, fucking any of that. But regardless, I mean, I think that we've watched enough boxing, read about enough boxing, heard from enough boxers that we kind of have a decent grasp about this kind of shit. But point is, we called out, or at least I called out, what I felt was a very clear cut case of abuse when we talked about the Fletcher family and what Lucille Fletcher used to do to specifically Frank, but also her other kids. And what we're talking about here with Jack Quarry, dude, there's no question that this is abuse. This is fucking nasty and ridiculous. And also on top of that, to kind of piggyback off of that type of shit, Jerry, when he was young, he went in there was another article I was reading in Sports Illustrated a little bit ago about he literally details this like string of injuries that his dad made him fight through when he was young, and some of them as he was an amateur. He said one of his first losses when he was an amateur happened because it was like, I think he had said 9 days after he'd broken his ankle, his dad made him fight because he had broken his ankle, and I think he had said that he'd broken his ankle sliding into second base or something like that. And his dad still made him fight. And I don't know what the nature of this was, if it was some kind of smoker where they were getting paid or what. But according to Jerry, his dad made him fight because he said they needed the money. So I like I said, I don't know what was happening here. If it was on the hush, under the table, black market, I don't know. Point is that it was really ridiculous, and that there was, like I said, a string of injuries. And also on top of that, when he was a young teenager, he got nephritis, which is a bad kidney infection, kidney issue that can lay you up, and that it was severe enough that they told him that he might at some point he might actually like not be able to walk, not be able to like, might be incontinent, etc. Somehow he got through it, and he basically this kind of string of things, his brother getting absolutely embarrassed and his dad being a constant fucking looming threat in his life, these injuries and ailments when he was a young kid. It's almost like they made him frightened, absolutely scared to death of not being tough, not looking tough, not seeming tough, and not being a tough guy. And that is the theme with Jerry Quarry's life, is that he goes like above and beyond, overboard, over the top, to show how tough he is, to the point where he fucks himself up and shortens his own life over it.
Totally. And you'll see that more and more as we talk about his career. But early on, to talk about it, man, Jerry Quarry was the one that really took up boxing that Jack Quarry was ready to invest everything in, because Jerry embodied everything Jack wanted to be. He was like, I'm going to live vicariously through Jerry. Jerry was strong as hell. He was athletic as hell. He had a cracking left hook, and he was a very, very talented amateur. You know, won the national Golden Glove, scored all of his wins by knockout. I think only had like 13 losses or so as an amateur. So he was, you know, really with a lot of promise as he turned pro. Not only that, Jack Quarry, who admittedly said he knew nothing about the pro game, he just kind of, you know, was a scrapper and a fighter who liked boxing. He brought on a guy who was known as Mr. Boxing, Mr. Amateur Boxing, Johnny Flores, who was a very, very well-known boxing aficionado and trainer and manager on the West Coast scene in the LA area. So good for Jerry right there. All right, Jerry already has strong backing with a guy who knows what he's doing, who can help him maneuver him. And then also his dad's never going to go anywhere, but at least he got someone that would experience to help maneuver their career. So right away, Jerry becomes a commodity on the West Coast. You know what I mean? Builds up a string of wins, a couple of hiccups along the way. Like he has a draw with a fighter by the name of Tony Alonji, who was a tough contender back then. But Jerry Quarry, the Express, is still going strong. His first loss in 1966 is against a guy by the name of Eddie Machen, who we've discussed on the show before. Eddie Machen, a charter member of the, Customado Club of guys that can never, ever fight Floyd Patterson. You know, that lost generation of heavyweights from the 50s and 60s. But Machen in 66 was past it, obviously, but he was still a very, very wily veteran, still very highly skilled. And as young and, tough as Quarry was, Machen had enough savvy in him that he was able to school him and, give him a pretty comprehensive decision. And the thing about that, though, is interesting is that Quarry took that loss in stride, because we've talked about this before, bro. People today talk so much about, oh man, you suffered a O, the guy took a L, oh, you lost his O. Back in the 60s, if you suffered a loss for the first time, that wasn't written off in your career. You know what I mean? That's just a bump in the bump in the road, a learning experience.
Major pause on that, bro.
Yeah, seriously. So this is the bump in the road, a learning experience. And that's what it is. You're fighting a guy like, Eddie Machen, and you lose to him. That's not the worst thing to happen to you.
Yeah, and even if you go to the Wikipedia page for the fight on BoxRec, it says there's a real good quote from Jerry Quarry down at the very bottom where he says, "Now the pressure's off. Now I can really start learning."
Yeah.
And that was something that was actually a consistent theme for Jerry Quarry throughout his career and life, as long as he could manage it. He was extremely candid, a very quiet, funny, fairly reserved,
yep,
but articulate, somebody who was he was not gregarious, not super talkative,
yeah,
but he was able to articulate what he was feeling very well. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, not everybody can do that. Not everybody can kind of put their feelings into words, and especially fighters, because fighters and from that family were and are discouraged from doing that. And so nonetheless, he was, I think in his dad's presence, he was probably a lot quieter and tried to act a lot tougher. But generally speaking, he was a very, just candid, open guy. And you kind of see that throughout his career, like I said, as long as he could manage it. And after that loss to Machen, it was like, and he showed it too, because he went on a nice unbeaten streak for a while.
And he was wildly popular at that point too.
Yep. Right around this time, right around that same time that he lost to Eddie Machen, they did an interview with Nat Fleischer that actually went into Sports Illustrated, and he was talking about a bunch of the young heavyweights that had been coming up, because it was not a lot of people were willing to say it, especially a lot of like the white media, because, well, for obvious reasons. But after Muhammad Ali really exploded, like, dude, interest in boxing exploded. We've talked about this, I think if you as the listener or viewer have followed the podcast enough that we've kind of talked about a lot of different eras, you can see that there's a real ebb and flow as far as the interest in boxing, et cetera, et cetera. When TV came along, there was a massive interest in boxing, and it was on, like several nights a week, sometimes live, and there weren't very many channels. So obviously a lot of people were watching it, blah, blah, blah. Toward the end of the 50s, however, it started to wane. And a lot of people started going like, Jesus, dude, is TV killing boxing? I think TV killed boxing. Oh my God. People were like panicking for real. And there was a big, a lot of people didn't like Sonny Liston, didn't think he was interesting, and so the heavyweights go, so goes boxing, as they say, blah, blah, blah. And then when Muhammad Ali comes along in the early and mid 60s, it was a massive injection into the arm of boxing as far as interest and as far as, people actually tuning in. And when that happened, it sparked interest also with other heavyweights and with other people coming up, and they thought they had a chance, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is right around the same time that Jerry Quarry's coming along, that there's this massive interest in boxing. Back to what I was saying, Nat Fleischer's asked about this young crop of heavyweights. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. Nat, what do who do you like? Blah, blah, blah. One of the first guys he names is Jerry Quarry. And he says, you will not believe, this is back, right around this time in the mid to late 60s. He says, you will not believe how much mail I get about Jerry Quarry. And this is back when they're getting, breeder mail and shit like that all the time. It probably doesn't happen quite the same way. But anyway, yeah, Nat Fleischer, editor of The Ring, says he's getting tons of mail about Jerry Quarry, which is, you believe it. LA right around this time was really also blowing up in the, on the West Coast boxing scene. And so there he was at the Olympic Auditorium, at the Civic Auditorium in San Francisco, all along the West Coast, fighting up and down the West Coast and becoming an attraction.
Quarry at that point, good looking guy, like you said, very articulate, fun, a jokester, made for good just made for good camera. And he was like a heartthrob, you know what I mean? Because he was a young guy. He turned pro. I think he was like in his late teens when he turned pro. So he's in his very early 20s now in his career. He has a fun style. He's a great boxer at this point. He's gaining experience and he's beating good fighters now, because after he lost to Machin, he started like up in his competition. And he's become a major commodity, a major attraction. And women love him. It's probably, when you think about, we probably could have mentioned him in the whole heartthrob thing back when we did that episode.
That's true. I thought about that later as I was researching for this. I was like, dang, we missed that. But
Quarry, he had he had all the little teeny boppers back then swarming and swooning over him. As much as they love the Beatles and the Doors and any other, major music artist or whoever that was popping back then, Jerry Quarry was getting the same type of attention in boxing, baby. So, and with that happening means big attraction, means big money. So there was a lot of fighters, including guys that I'm about to bring up right now, that wanted to fight him because they knew they were going to get money out of it. Guys like Sonny Liston, who after one of his last fights, after he stops Henry Clark, Howard Cosell is interviewing him. It was like, oh, Sonny, what do you want to do next? He was like, well, we're supposed to go to California to fight this boy that we were supposed to mention fighting black, blah, blah, blah. And we're gonna see if we can do it. He was like, oh, Billy Joyner. He was like, no, not Billy Joyner. Jerry Quarry's his name. Oh, you're gonna fight? Yeah, Jerry Quarry. So we're gonna see if we can go over there and they're gonna take the fight with us. But that fight unfortunately never materialized. Instead, Liston's victim, former two-time heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson, who was on the comeback trail himself and extremely popular, took on the challenge of Jerry Quarry, and they ended up meeting in LA. And that, my friend, was a hell of a fight.
I mean, dude, it winds up being that Floyd Patterson just can't keep himself off the deck, dude. Bless him, bless the guy. It made for some really fun fights. I mean,
bless them the fact that it's 1967, he's going toe to toe with Jerry Quarry, and he's still a top contender for a title. Like, I find that fucking awesome for him. And
he would have been like a top flight, like light heavyweight today, like maybe
a cruiserweight,
yeah, maybe like a medium sized cruiserweight or something like that. But I mean, the guy was he was so fallible and so entertaining. Just hit the deck against pretty much everybody. But Jerry Quarry, I'll just say, when we talk about, like what we were talking about earlier and talking about people bringing up Jerry Quarry as somebody who would, do great in this era or something like that, I don't necessarily disagree per se, but when it comes to in the ring, when it comes to style wise, Jerry Quarry had a lot of shortcomings. Jerry Quarry had a lot of holes in his game. At his best, he moved his head pretty well, but not quite enough. And he relied more on a bruising physical style with a big left hook. Kind of think of basically Joe Frazier with less head movement. Joe Frazier did a lot of the kind of bobbing and up and down type of stuff because that's really the only thing that got Joe Frazier through. Style wise, obviously he had far more intangibles, but style wise, that's a lot of what got Joe Frazier past. Like he had slow feet, he did not have super great footwork, not very fast hands, etc. But he moved his head well, and he was able to kind of maneuver himself into landing his hook and whatnot. Jerry Quarry, though, was a little bit more kind of like lay his head on your chest and just kind of like go to work type of fighter. And so because of that also made for some entertaining fights. But I think that Jerry Quarry would find himself in trouble against a lot of heavyweights who pretty much were just well schooled. You know what I mean? And I think that also even Floyd Patterson was, even 1967 version of Floyd Patterson, who was not done, who was definitely not done as a fighter, obviously long in the tooth, but not done. Because if we talked about Floyd Patterson's career, he went on after this to do some pretty good work, actually. And actually, we talked about it on a different show. We had a really nice comeback, like an underrated comeback. But point being, Floyd Patterson also showed that Jerry Quarry could be outmaneuvered, could be outboxed, and Eddie Machen showed that too. But an older Floyd Patterson showed it, and obviously Jerry Quarry had a lot to learn at this point.
It was. Early on, I think Patterson was actually dubbed the favorite in their fight, just on sentimental and everything else. But like early on, like you said, Patterson always got decked early by everybody. Even Tom McNeely somehow decked him. And I mean, think about that. Peter McNeely's dad dropped Floyd Patterson. But
didn't he hit the deck like in the first round? I want to say against Pete Rademacher.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Pete Rademacher dropped him to either the first or second round. Yep.
Totally. Imagine that, dude. Not only you get the shot at the heavyweight title in your pro debut, but you actually drop the champ. Like I'd be like, holy shit,
Yeah, man. Johansson, I think, dropped him in all of their fights. And you name it. Yeah, Patterson just. God bless him.
I mean, he usually got up. I'll give him that.
He always got up, usually, unless you were Sonny Liston or the first.
Yeah, basically.
He always got up, and he got up in this one too. Patterson got dropped twice early on, like twice in the second round, like he usually did. Some people that thought Patterson was already finished and Quarry was going to dust him up, we're all like, all right, this is anticlimactic. But Patterson came back, like you said.
They ought to just give Howard Cosell like a fucking soundbite, dude. And down goes Patterson, because they could just use it whenever,
Exactly. So, but then Patterson came back, man. He roared back, like you said. He got in Quarry, beat him up, they roughed him up. Like he had Quarry reeling, bloodied at the end. They rumbled toe to toe. Quarry suffered a knockdown later on in the fight. Like it was a great brawl. And at the end of it, a lot of people thought Patterson probably edged it, but it being in California, Quarry being really popular, it was a legitimately close fight. It ends up being a draw. Patterson, the reason why everybody loves him is because he was such a gentleman. And after the fight, he even said so as much. He was like, look, we gave them a good show. Hopefully we can do it again type deal. Like, that's what they deem it. It is a draw. It is what it is. And most people wouldn't take that. Oh, man, we got robbed. Oh, bullshit. Nah, they took it in stride. Anyways, their futures were going to collide soon enough. Because what we're getting to next is this is the late 60s now, right? 1967, 1968. What happens around that time, Pat? Muhammad Ali is forced to give up his belts.
It's just general national social unrest. The civil rights movement is absolutely at its height, at its peak. Not to get into too much other stuff, but there's been civil rights leaders killed around this time. There's a lot going on. Muhammad Ali.
Very, very heavy. You got Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, a lot happening.
Indeed. Yeah, there was a lot going on right around this time. And Muhammad Ali found himself right in the thick of it by refusing to be drafted to be sent to Vietnam. There was a whole bunch of political maneuvering from the U.S. Army and, a bunch of I think a handful of U.S. senators who were just out and to get the fucking guy, and they pulled his license to fight, Muhammad Ali's license to fight, which meant that the disgusting parasitic alphabet organizations, quicker than you could say lickety fucking split, was like, we need to hold some tournaments, baby. We need to do something, and we need to get some fighters in here to hold these belts and get some sanctioning fees, blah blah blah. So
no, it's the good old days, man. There was only one champion in every division. Nah, this caused quite a few headaches for everyone involved. All right.
And on top of that, and well, I mean, we could do an entire show about just the WBA tournament alone.
Yes.
Because there was a shitload of reshuffling. They had the initial proposed names for the WBA tournament. There was like 2 that remained in the actual tournament, because the rest were like, either we ain't touching that WBA shit, or, you know, we're doing something else. That's ridiculous. Like Joe Frazier was like, I'm not touching that shit. Get the fuck out of here. And I mean, for a handful of reasons, but point being, Muhammad Ali, license yanked, no longer champion, excommunicated from the school of boxing, and WBA in particular was like, we need a tournament to find a new champion. And among these people in this tournament, Jerry motherfucking Quarry, bro. And, you know, like I said, it was kind of a rotating group of characters here, but very historic.
9 that they ended up with.
Yeah, no, it was. It actually was.
It was, because there was Quarry, correct me if I'm wrong on these other ones. I mean, if I'm missing anybody, you got Oscar Bonavena, Carl Mildenberger, Thad Spencer, former WBA champ, Ernie Terrell, Jimmy Ellis, Quarry, Patterson, and
Leotis Martin.
I'm missing? Leotis Martin. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so, probably Leotis Martin probably being like the least recognizable to most people. Yeah, but was a solid contender around this time.
Totally.
So yeah,
and
he
I mean, those are like for the late 60s, that's a pretty good crop of talent right there for who you can get for a tournament.
Yeah, it really was. And actually, you know, the fights wound up overall being pretty good, or at the very least interesting. You know, the Bonavena Mildenberger fight was an absolute fiasco. You should definitely read about that shit. And there's a really good Sports Illustrated article called, I think it was called Bean Can Bout in Frankfurt. I think was the title of the article. And the reason why was because nobody could find a bell, and they literally used a bean can for the bell. Yeah. And so it's that bean can bout.
Kind of like what they did in Ali Burbick when they had to go find a legit cowbell because no one actually bought a real bell. And they said
nobody could hear shit.
One of the guys chasing the cow around trying to get the bell off of it while the cow was like trying to get away from him.
Yeah, and so Oscar Bonavena is beating the hell out of Carl Mildenberger, and the only reason I bring this up is obviously because I wrote about it, but it was part of this tournament. And it was that particular leg of it was a fiasco because they took it to Germany, and that was really the main portion of the tournament where people were like, what the fuck is going on here? The rest of it was fine. But in any case, yeah, Jerry Quarry enters into this tournament, and they get the bright idea that as one of the first legs of this tournament to put Patterson and Quarry back in together in a rematch. Because, you know, they matched up well the first time, knockdowns galore. You know, there was some good spirited fighting. I'm pretty sure both fights are on YouTube. I've seen both, so they had to have been on YouTube. So, you know, it makes sense. Yeah, totally.
And it was almost like a repeat of their first fight. Patterson goes down again in the second. Patterson goes down again a little bit afterwards because he always has to suffer at least more than one knockdown. Quarry, it comes roaring back again. Quarry gets beat up again for a majority of a fight. They go rumbling toe-to-toe at the end, extremely close. You can kind of flip a coin, but this time Quarry gets the decision.
And Quarry's ability to keep his feet this time might have been what saved him, or at least on the cards it did, because
it was extremely close. Yeah.
It was a razor thin. They just matched up well. I guess their styles.
I mean, their style is definitely going to match, man. Patterson was a great boxer, but he wasn't a guy that ran away from anybody. He came from the Customado school of peekaboo, so he would be in your face. Quarry, like you already mentioned, he can be a boxer when he wanted to be, especially early on. He's still kind of transitioning to the slugger we'd see him to be, but like he still kind of kept a little bit like of his pedigree from being an amateur. Like he was on the cusp of going full out. But yeah, they just matched it, but it's still like all the defensive holes and everything you said were still prominent. So they just matched up great right there. But yeah, Patterson, Quarry was able to move on. He moves to the next round. He ends up fighting Thad Spencer. Thad Spencer was a tough contender in his fight before that, beat the hell out of Ernie Terrell, got him out of the tournament. Quarry scored a very impressive knockout in that one, looked spectacular. On the other leg, Jimmy Ellis was moving up in the ranks as well. Jimmy Ellis now had knocked out the aforementioned Leotis Martin, and then he beat Oscar Bonifay, correct?
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and Jimmy Ellis, of course, was I guess not famous yet quite at this time, but growing in popularity and also was known for being in the same camp, the same Louisville camp as Muhammad Ali.
Totally. And what's fascinating too, Jimmy Ellis was a former middleweight who got beat up by guys like Ruben Hurricane Carter. No shame in that, but the fact that he was able to move up to heavyweight now is starting to whoop on prominent heavyweights is pretty interesting. But so you see like sort of a collision course starting to happen here. And so eventually after Jerry Quarry knocks out Thad Spencer and then Jimmy Ellis beats, was it Bonavena? Did he beat Bonavena in the semifinals? Yeah, because he knocked out Leotis Martin in the first one. So Bonavena must have been the semis. And then yeah, all roads led to the finals between Jimmy Ellis and Jerry Quarry for the WBA title.
Yep. Yeah, Oscar Bonavena once more showed his vulnerability against a good boxer puncher. Yeah. That was just a style that he could not get past. And if they were above a certain class, he couldn't get past them. And Jimmy Ellis was one of those fighters he was not going to get past that way. And yeah, so he wound up losing to Jimmy Ellis, and then Jimmy Ellis gets in there with Jerry Quarry, but similarly, obviously not the same kind of style as Oscar Bonavena, but similarly, like I'd kind of mentioned before, those kind of shortfalls or whatever, shortcomings with Jerry Quarry's style, he once again showed a vulnerability against somebody who can move, against somebody who can jab, against somebody who could kind of circle around him and keep him from planting. And, because Jerry Quarry very much had that style where he needed to have his feet set to throw. Like he wasn't going to be, it wasn't like he was a bad boxer, but he wasn't going to be Ray Robinsoning you fucking all night, like he was gonna have to he's gonna have to fucking plow forward and get you. And if you could prevent him from doing that, like Jimmy Ellis definitely could, it's not like he had an easy night, but he made it easier by doing that, no question.
And not only that, a lot of people were kind of surprised by Quarry's like reluctance to really go. Like he was very, he wasn't very aggressive at the fight, and people were
but there's a story behind that.
There is a story behind that. So, anyways, Quarry ends up losing the split decision. He was very uninspired in the fight, and that raised a lot of doubt in him and a lot of questions. And that in turn, what really changed his style and changed.
And sorry, especially because that was for the final, that was for the title, and so people were like, "What the fuck? Why was he so listless?"
Yeah. So there is a story behind that, and the story goes. So first off, Jerry Quarry, I guess years ago, suffered a back injury swimming. Correct? I think it was.
That was the official story was that
he tweaked it in a swimming accident.
He dove into a pool, but like didn't dive correctly and hurt his back.
Totally. But the real story, or at least according to the family, same thing. We talked about family shenanigans between the brothers early on with James and Jerry. Well, according to them, they got into a drunken argument at some family function or somewhere at a bar, and James shoved Jerry. And as he shoved him right into a jukebox, right on the edge of it. So Jerry smacked his back, and I think cracked a vertebrae in the interim too.
According to Jimmy, he fractured his vertebrae, which is pretty fucking serious, breaking a backbone.
And they didn't postpone the fight, did they?
No, and so it was all like they went forward with it, and the same kind of thing, like I said earlier in his like amateur career, when Jack, who was still handling his son's careers at this point, I don't know whether he knew about this. Perhaps he did, maybe he didn't, but if he did, I can almost guarantee he would have said, "Oh well, you're fighting," and he fought and he lost. And I mean, I don't know, who knows how truthful that is either. But it definitely would go a ways to explain why Jerry Quarry did not look very good.
And he almost he was trying to counterpunch and he just was, Ellis was able to control it, and got a a very convincing decision. And here's the thing too, man, is that that was probably ends up being that was easily Quarry's easiest chance, not easiest, but best chance of being a champion at all. Because when you think about who Quarry ended up having to fight for the title and just the competition he had to go with as the turn of the 70s happened,
Yeah,
like
that was in 1968. That was in mid 1968. And so then it's like shit starts to ramp up right in like
yes,
right about
quickly.
1969, 1970. And so that was exactly like I didn't even think about it that way, but that's a great point. That was probably his best and last good chance at winning a championship. And so when if you do agree or think about it that way, then Jimmy fucked up his chance at ever becoming a champion.
Yeah, thanks a lot, big bro. So
Yeah, fucking jukebox. The fuck? Well constructed jukebox.
So, like we said, man, he holds that stigma now because a lot of people were really disappointed in him. I mean, Quarry was the favorite in that fight. Like people, he was the favorite in the tournament because he was so popular, and the fact that he was to the finals and he looked impressive in getting there. Jimmy Ellis wasn't, like we said, a very very solid fighter, but I think Quarry, everybody was hoping for a coronation for him. So with the disappointment of that, he has something to prove now, and so he turns his focus from the WBA to the other guy who's calling himself champion at this point, Joe Frazier, because like we said, they're separated. Frazier has the recognition in various states with power, though. He's recognized in New York State, which, if you think about it, back in the late 60s, early 70s, has probably absolute power over the country. So that holds a lot of credence. Maine, Massachusetts, and a
I
few
think
others, right?
Was it Pennsylvania or had they split? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I have to
But
look at the.
regardless, yeah,
I
like
know.
New
I know there
York's
was
the big
like,
one.
yeah, New York was the big one. And that's how he was always recognized too. They didn't mention the other states. They always said he was the New York State heavyweight champion.
Right. Yeah.
So when he fights, first off, Jerry Quarry beats Buster Mathis, who was a contender, flubby guy, but a good boxer, underachiever, whatever you want to call it. But he beats him impressively. All right. But that sets him up to fight Joe Frazier. Rampaging Joe Frazier in 1969. Like just an absolute animal at this point. 60. Yeah. You know what I mean? At his peak peak, peak of just beating the hell out of people. And this is the point where everyone, you realize Jerry Quarry's courage because Quarry has something to prove here. He knew, he's holding that stigma. He's feeling bad. And this has been written about that. He said he was really angry about how he performed in the Jimmy Ellis fight and how people treated him afterwards and what was said about him. So he said, you know what? I'm going to go out there and fight Joe Frazier toe to toe, which was against everything anyone ever told him. They're like, please don't do that. It's the last thing you can do. But what did Jerry Quarry do? He went out there and fought Joe Frazier toe to toe and won that. And that first round is one of the wildest, most awesome, brutal first rounds you can find, man. Like those two just go at it. And they go at it for the whole fight before Quarry gets beaten into a standstill. But my God, it was awesome.
Jerry Quarry literally looked like a white version of Joe Frazier, just even in terms of look. Just thick legs, thick arms, thick torso, blocky head.
Blocky head, yep.
Just somebody who's like meant to just a sturdy looking human being,
Totally.
And they had a fairly similar offensive style, both big on the left hook. The first fight in particular is just a left hook fucking festival for the first few rounds. They're both just pushing, shoving each other, and it's a good physical fight. So just to kind of rewind just briefly, so just kind of give some background, Joe Frazier earlier on, maybe about a dozen fights earlier, had hit the deck twice against Oscar Bonavena and almost got stopped. Would have gotten stopped had he hit the deck one more time, but did not, and got through the fight. And not only got through the fight, but started beating Oscar Bonavena up toward the end of the fight. Was getting it back. And then so when he wound up picking up the New York State Athletic Commission title, it was almost like he felt he had something to prove. He made a string of defenses, mostly against fighters who were kind of like, hey, he wins the title against Buster Mathis, who you'd mentioned earlier, but whose main attribute when it comes to this show was just he was just much bigger than these kind of like more normal or average size guys. A lot of it was flab, but he was still bigger, and he was a pretty decent fighter. But Manuel Ramos, who we've talked about before, not a very big heavyweight, and the kind of guy who, you stand in there with Joe Frazier, dude, you're getting chopped down. And he did. Oscar Bonavena, though, too. Oscar Bonavena comes back and gets pretty much whitewashed by Joe Frazier in their rematch, who Frazier beat him up for most of the night. And so Dave Ziegelwitz, I mean, we won't even go there. Fucking poor Dave
Oh,
Ziegelwitz.
Ziggy.
Yeah, we're not going there. Poor guy. We won't speak ill of the dead. But I mean, but
Ziggy's
the
dead?
point.
Oh no.
No, I mean, because he
Oh,
got murked in that fucking.
yeah, he definitely did.
He
Yes.
got murked. But point being, Joe Frazier had, in a fairly short span of time, though, he had clearly demonstrated that, like, that was a fluke. He had toughened up. He had refined his style a bit with the Yank Durham and with Eddie Futch.
And I was
And
just whooping ass.
this was at a time where he was obviously going like this, and Jerry Quarry was too. It wasn't like Jerry Quarry was on the decline or anything like that. It's just that, like I said earlier, there were some things that Joe Frazier did that he was better at or had that Jerry Quarry did not have. And he just started fucking putting the absolute wood to fucking Jerry Quarry, bro. Just started whacking him. And I mean, it's beautiful to watch, but it's rough too, especially in the context of what we're talking about here. You go back, dude, and Jerry
I
Quarry
mean,
started.
watching Frazier go to work, man, is like just
It's beautiful.
It is.
It's because it's simple too. It's not even like he's really doing. It's subtle. There's a lot of shit he does too that's better than you think.
I just did the worst left hook impression, but you know what I mean with him when he just comes in with it, just bow,
But
bow, and he leaves Quarry there. He just,
that's the crazy shit. That's the crazy shit about Joe Frazier, though, dude. Is a lot of people are like, oh, he's unskilled. All he has is that left hook. Wait, hold on though. Think about that. If all he had was that left hook and he still got that far, how good do you got to fucking be with that left hook to make it land, bro? And he knew how to set it up. You got to know how to set it up, and he did. And this was him in prime form. You know what I mean? So Jerry Quarry really did not have much of a chance here. And so all I was going to say was
with that strategy. I mean, credit to him for wanting to like prove his point or whatever it was. But I mean, there's other ways to do it besides going head to head with Joe Frazier.
Yep, exactly. And in the context of what we're talking about here, Jerry Quarry started boxing when he was 5 or 6 years old in a Golden Gloves tournament. By the time he was like 16, he had over 100 amateur fights. And now people might not even say, that's not that crazy. But point being that he'd taken a lot of punches by this time. And then you get in there and kind of with Joe Frazier and take a shellacking. It's not great. It's not great. Probably not great for your brain.
Absolutely not. But like you said, man, you know what? Quarry, after the fight, even though he was stopped on a bad cut, which become, a common theme throughout his career. Cuts him and his brother, actually. He redeemed his credibility, though, man. People were in love with him again. That was the 1969 fight of the year for Ring Magazine. And people were just hyped. They were like, you know what, Quarry, like, he really, as much as that would take years off of anyone else's career, that beating that he took, because that was a vicious, brutal beating. Frazier just pounded the shit out of him. But to his credit, he came back from that and he still was able to beat other contenders, you know what I mean? And he was still remaining a big name. He was just biding his time before he was able to get, another fight. He did have another hiccup in a very weird fight with George Chuvalo, who was definitely on the back end himself at that point. But it was like, it was one of those that, if you want to give current, a more recent example, when Aaron Pryor got knocked out by Bobby Joe Young, he goes down, goes to one knee, gets up, goes back down. Same thing happened with this fight with Jerry Quarry. Quarry gets dropped, a legitimate shot, but he goes down to one knee, takes the count for a few seconds, right? And then gets up and then goes back down again, thinking he's going to be able to beat it, and then gets counted out. And then when he does that, he's like shook, he's going fighting and stuff like that. And there's a famous photo of the MSG photographer that I have in a book over here, George Napoleon. I forgot his last name. But there's a famous photo that he took of Chuvalo with his arms raised, freaking out, because that was a huge win for him at that point in his career. And Quarry is, being covered up, and that was a big loss for Quarry. That was a setback.
Yeah, Chuvalo was not a massive puncher. Like he was a strong guy, but he was not a massive puncher.
Yeah.
But like that,
Quarry wasn't expected to lose that fight.
No, he was not expected to lose that fight. It was feature at Madison Square Garden. And that was actually another thing too, was that a theme throughout his career for whatever reason was he was all about fighting in Madison Square Garden, and that he said that there were a handful of times where he took opportunities to fight at Madison Square Garden where in hindsight he felt he probably should not have fought at that time. Like he wasn't ready, he wasn't in shape. He was a drinker. He and his brother were drinkers and liked to party. And so basically it was just at a point where, yeah, like he sometimes he said he could not get in shape, but he took fights he should not have because he liked to fight at Madison Square Garden, or that he liked these other like historic venues, which is kind of weird. But nonetheless, yeah, that was a kind of an anomaly with George Chuvalo. Weird fight where, like you said, gets knocked down, up, down, and just kind of, we've seen it with other fights. I think one that I brought up somewhat recently on another episode when I think you talked about the Aaron Pryor fight was Muhammad Abdullayev, when he got
Yes,
knocked down against Emmanuel Clottey. And
that's
then he's
right.
like
That's
sitting there
right.
like counting along with the referee. And then at 10, he's like, whoa, wait, what? Oh shit, I forgot 10. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
You know, like, but it's like,
There's
it's
always a few instances like that. I remember Rafael Morales, when he got knocked out by against Mauro Gutierrez. He got dropped, went down to a knee. I think went down, did the same thing, got up, got all confused, throwing his
yeah,
arms up. No, 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 shaking his head. You know, don't
it's
look at
almost
your
like
corner
there's
trying to keep the count with them. Look at the referee. Look at somebody else besides your damn corner. You know what I mean? Don't
it's
pay
it's
attention to them.
it's like there's this misfire in their brain where it's like not enough of a misfire to like totally fuck their legs up, but enough to kind of like to make the thinking not be totally
Yeah, totally.
correct.
But
You know, like
whatever it was, that was a big setback for Corey. Yeah, I
it
mean, in
it
the
came
rankings, but enough for his popularity. Of course, he was still going to be popular, but I mean, at the
it
same
came at a
time,
bad time.
it did.
Yeah, it came at a bad time, and it definitely it made it so that he had to kind of take a big step back on the level of opposition and to be kind of more careful. And they talked about that too. Jack Quarry had talked about that they were worried. You know, he had talked about after a few losses, it was kind of weird because Jack Quarry, for as much of a bastard as he was, you know, he showed
Good
these
way to describe him.
well, these showed these moments, and most of them were in the wake of his son's losses, where he would almost kind of like be contemplative, like, you know, I shouldn't have done that. Like, you know, we shouldn't have done that. We didn't have time. I knew you weren't ready. You know, but almost all of it was like, it was very Catholic shame for sure. Irish Catholic shame would be a very good way to describe it, because it was like, it wasn't like it was something that he did, like he was really having an introspective moment, but it was like he was shaming his sons, like you weren't ready type of shit. But even so, he would occasionally show, like there were some quotes after like the Chuvalo fight where he was talking about basically that he regretted this or shouldn't have done that and blah blah blah. But like I said, it happened a handful of times. Point being that they had to dial it back. You know, a Scrap Iron Johnson, Mac Foster was probably the biggest
Well,
biggest
Corey
name
was
on.
brought in probably was Corey was definitely I don't think was brought in to be a Lamford Johnson. I'm not Scrap Iron. Mac Foster, no.
Well, I mean, look
Foster
at
at that point was undefeated. All of his wins were by knockout.
exactly. You know,
And
and
he already had a couple of old scalps on his head, like Zora Foley, for example. So, you know, this was Corey considering this is, you know, he was thought of maybe to be a part of like the old era, still like, you know, that little past like the late 60s as they move into the new one. Mac Foster was supposed to be the future. So, yeah, Corey was brought in to lose that.
yeah, Mac Foster had ties to a number of other big heavyweights that he'd either been in camp with, sparred with,
Yeah.
trained with, whatever. And they'd,
There's the
you know, a
rumor
lot
he knocked out Liston in sparring.
they'd talked about that, you know, basically, yeah, like you said, he was the future. Like we talked recently about Jim rumors and legends and stuff like that, and he was kind of one of those guys that was like a gym legend or, you know, whatever, coming into that fight 24-0, bunch of knockouts, scary looking dude, you know, a very hard punching looking guy. And yeah, dude, Jerry Quarry went into that fight. I'd have to look at the odds, I'm not gonna lie, but he went into that fight, I would presume, not as a big favorite, you know, not as the guy that's being brought in likely to win. So that was a big win that pointed him very quickly upward.
Quickly, man, because after that, soon afterwards, he was able to get the Ali fight when Ali finally was able to come back.
Yeah, and I think that probably speaks a lot to Ali recognizing that Jerry Quarry was still pretty popular, and that he wouldn't have just come back against anybody.
No, there were rumblings that he was gonna fight others. Like in the Billy, I keep on bringing up Billy Joyner, but there's an article of his in ring as always. But one of the later ones from the 2000s when they were like just remembering him. But like he mentioned he was gonna be an Ali opponent, and there were like talks about that. But then Ali even said, "Who's Billy Joyner?" Like I can't, like I'm not gonna come back against him. And so, but like you said, Jerry Quarry is actually still huge, still a very popular name, and he's coming off a big win over Mac Foster, including another one after that too. So he's like, totally. That's a good win. That's a good name for Ali to come back and win against. And not only that, it's a fight that Ali knew he was probably going to win too and look good against. So that's why he took it.
Yeah, and like for the exact same reasons I brought up earlier, very little head movement, a guy who's going to be pretty stationary. Ali's not
And
going to
he's
have
throwing
to.
the cuts.
Yeah, it's might not be a long night. Ali's not going to have to run too fast. He might have to time up a little bit, but it shouldn't be physically too much of a chore. A lot of people forget Ali was a good 6'3", a good 220, 225, not a small guy, not super muscled, but
Mm-hmm.
not a small guy. And I think that that's one of the things that in that Facing Ali documentary, a couple of I don't remember who specifically, but a couple of them had said that they were surprised at how physically strong he was in the clinch. And that that he was actually really good at really strong and really good at tying opponents up, which we already know. But regardless, going into that fight, yeah, Ali probably looked at that and was just licking his chops like, oh man, I'm going to cut this guy up, cut this boy up. And on top of that, there was this extra element. Sorry, because I know you're chomping at the bit, but there was this extra element where I actually forgot to bring this up. Before the Jimmy Ellis fight, man, oh man, they had to go ahead and bring back an old trope, baby. One that we all hate. They started calling Jerry Quarry the Great White Hope. And I mean, I'm not saying everybody did, and it obviously wasn't used in the same way or in the same with the exact same kind of tone as it was used in the Jack Johnson era. But nonetheless, it's the kind of thing where if you start using that language, it's obviously a very clear callback to that kind of stuff. And it was a term that was coined mostly by Jack London, the author Jack London, fucking racist author Jack London, who is
up to you, Jim.
Yeah, somebody who I was forced to read in fucking middle school like several different times.
Sure,
But
we all were at some point.
what's that?
I'm sure we all were.
Whatever. I mean, I remember the books, but I'm not like, yay. I just remember reading them.
Ah, fuck him, dude. All right.
Yeah, fuck him. Fuck Call of the Wild, bro. Fucking White Fang. Get your fucking Fang out of here, bro.
Right, man, I don't care what he wrote. It's what he said about Jack Johnson.
Yep.
Make open pledge to Jim Jeffries to save the title for the white race. All right.
Yeah, White Fang your ass out of here, bro. So fucking the term White Hope was largely pushed by Jack London in a racist attempt to fucking blah blah. We know a lot of this story, but this term was recycled again for Jerry Quarry going into the Jimmy Ellis fight, which pissed Ellis off, and Ellis was like, "No, I'm not having this shit." And I think that was a good motivator for Ellis too. Like you said, was like he had been through quite a bit already by this point, but nonetheless, he was ready to kick some ass, and he did. But also that I think was a little bit of a motivator for Ali too, in that he saw Jerry Quarry as one of the white contenders that he was going to have to, he's going to have to whoop this guy's ass. He's going to have to learn. He's going to have to learn a lesson. He's going to have to show a lesson here. And I mean, perhaps I'm reaching with that, but I think that was a little bit of a motivating factor for Ali.
No, totally. And there was, tensions were still really high. Ali still hadn't turned the leaf yet of being like Mr. Popular. Vietnam War obviously was still going on. There was still like a lot of division in the country in terms of I agree with Ali. I don't. I mean, by the time he was allowed to come back to boxing, I think the tide had turned and people like being on his side. But there was still obviously a lot of people wondering like that, right? And if you go by that movie, also the one that he starred in as himself, The Greatest in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that there was like when he was getting ready for the fight, there was like racist fans coming up to him saying, "Oh yeah, I hope you get killed," and blah, 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 all this other shit. So
They were still calling him Clay on the cover of the ring.
they were, even though they were even though they wanted to keep on recognizing him as champion. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it was a real weird dichotomy about that because generally speaking, they treated him very well over, like in comparison, relatively speaking, but calling him Clay on the cover was weird.
Yeah, they always did that. But anyways, the fight was kind of anticlimactic when you think about it because it ended so quickly because Corey's eyes just split open. I mean, Ali was going to beat him regardless, but this was Ali's first fight back. Corey wasn't really as used up yet as they would be when they had a rematch years later. And when the fight ended, Corey seemed like he was warming up a little bit. He was starting to, rumble. And he was getting in there. He was starting to, do a little bit, but his eye was, a ghastly wound, and obviously he didn't want the fight to end. But there's nothing you really can do about that. Yeah, Ali Express was on its way. But I mean, the thing is, Corey wasn't like beat up in the fight. He wasn't really knocked around, and he didn't suffer too much damage. His eye split open. So this being what it is, it's only 1970. That wasn't going to be that much of a hindrance to him,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yep. No,
Plus,
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like motherfuckers get cut all the time. Like, what are you gonna do?
And he wasn't like getting completely outclassed. Like he was, coming on a little bit when it got happened. So whatever, he's still popular, and he had a bunch of string of a bunch of string of wins after that as well.
Yeah. He's strung together what 6-7 wins or something like that. Jack Bodell, British fighter, went over to London to beat Jack Bodell, who was not a great fighter by any means, but who was a popular British fighter over there.
Bugner, didn't he?
I'm sorry?
He beat Bugner, I think.
I think so, yeah. And he had sparred with Muhammad Ali a whole bunch of times, somewhat famously. And so in any case, he Eduardo Corletti, another dude who was, I want to say, South American, from Italian family or something like that. In any case, strung together a bunch of wins and then got another chance at Muhammad Ali, who I think, again, still recognized that Jerry Quarry was popular. And also on top of that, one of the absolute greatest taglines for a fight card ever. Soul Brothers versus Quarry Brothers.
Yeah. Depending on how you look at it. I mean, yeah.
I mean, yeah, best, like bad best, not
totally. Not, I don't hate it either, man. I mean, the poster's cool and everything, but like it is what it is. But that was a sad card when you think about it, because we're gonna talk about Mike in a moment, and what ends up happening to him beforehand, I guess Jerry said, affected him so badly that he couldn't do anything with Ali that night. And Jerry, if you watch that fight too, Jerry does look like he's kind of used up in it. Ali,
yeah, he doesn't look like the same type of fighter just 2 years later.
Absolutely, you can already see this visible difference. And Ali doesn't have any issues whatsoever before he stops him. Like, it was kind of just a beatdown.
Yeah, I mean, he just he didn't look like somebody who was confident that night. And maybe his brother, what happened
I'm
was,
sure, bro, if I had a little brother I just saw get decapitated in front of me like that, I'm not sure if I'd be up to fight right afterwards.
Yeah, that's like a really, really, really brutal knockout.
It's
real
one of
bad.
the brutal knockouts in boxing history, especially in the more modern era that we can, the fight's 40 years old now, but it still holds up today, 40 years later, as one of the most vicious, brutal, not 40 years, excuse me, 50.
Yeah, 50.
Yeah, excuse me. I got my date up. I was thinking 72, 82, but 50 years later, it still holds up as one of the most brutal knockouts you can ever find. Like,
super rough, dude. Super rough. Yeah, I would buy that excuse. We were talking about like the venues and stuff like that in boxing, and Madison Square Garden still being so massive. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fought at Madison Square Garden, huge. Las Vegas had not yet really entered the equation in that way. Las Vegas really only rose to prominence in the late 50s, early 60s with Floyd Patterson. Floyd Patterson was one of the ones who, along with the mob, helped push Las Vegas as a fight hub. But then Muhammad Ali also helped kind of secure that, and that fight card was at the convention center in Las Vegas. And in any case, so that was like considered a somewhat earlier Las Vegas fight card, their rematch. But he couldn't do anything with him, winds up getting TKO'd in 7 rounds. But he still had a couple of hurrahs after that. Not too many, but he still had a couple of hurrahs, at least enough to kind of get his name in the books,
Totally. And the ones you were mentioning would be one by the name of Ron Lyle, who was an undefeated contender, kind of in the mold of Mac Foster, except without all the knockouts like that. And another one who, hoping after he got beat up by Ali, he was going to add the scalp of Jerry Quarry to his back, and Quarry was able to turn back the clock that night. Very impressive performance for Quarry. What was even more impressive, though, was the fight that would be three fights later, Ernie Shavers. Ernie Shavers at this point was a seasoned veteran, had over 40 fights, had a couple of losses as well, but just a bad man. I believe he had knocked out Jimmy Ellis at this point in one round, and just looked
brutal uppercut.
Brutal uppercut. I watched it the other day, bro. Right,
his whole fro just
it looks like a fish out of water. The way he's just flopping on the canvas.
Yeah.
And he had hurt Shavers before that. Connor with the right hand jumped in like a maniac, trying to finish him, and then their arms get crisscrossed like that in a weird like sword thing.
Yeah.
And just hits him.
Yeah, it was like Shavers fucking dirty boxed his ass and just fucking was like bloop, gave him the old uppercut.
Jab. Shavers like their left arms kind of got cut, and Shavers hit him with the uppercut. So Shavers is feeling himself. I mean, there's a whole weird story behind that one too, where Shavers was supposed to fight Quarry. Archie Moore allows Jeff Merritt to spar Shavers before the fight. Jeff Merritt shatters Shavers' jaw. Don King throws an absolute fit, fires Archie Moore, loses his mind, gets pissed off. Gil Clancy is pissed off about it because he's Quarry's manager, and he was like, "You don't have a guy." He was like, "If you're gonna spar Jeff Merritt, you need to do it for money. What the fuck are you doing?" Like, it was just a fiasco. But anyways, the fight ends up happening, and Quarry puts on a spectacular performance. Man, he went right head to head with Shavers, which no one ever would want to do. Took a few solid shots himself, but quickly, he was able to dent Shavers' chin, which was never really that strong to begin with, and scored a spectacular first round stoppage. Like, that was a big win for Quarry. And unfortunately, that was probably his last big hurrah of his career.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was in there, Lorenzo Zanon. Yeah, he got that win.
He got knocked out by Frazier soon after that in a weird fight. Joe Lewis, of all people, was refereeing, and Ken Norton beat him up. So after Ken Norton stops him in 75, you think that's the end of it. Quarry retires, and rightfully so, because he was used up, man. Norton beat the daylights out of him from one pillar to post to the other. And like you said, that fight was at Madison Square Garden as well. But it's a respectable career. You lose in 75, the fights, you've had a career since the early 60s. Like, Quarry's been around the block, man. A really, really good fighter and extremely popular. He had nothing to be ashamed of. And at that point, he really shouldn't have come back. But he got the itch. You know why? Because in 1977, he comes back to fight a guy, a European fighter by the name of Lorenzo Zanon. Zanon was one of those fighters, I think we mentioned him a couple of times. The European fighters that came over in the late 70s, him, Alfio Spaghetti Rigetti, Alfredo Evangelista, Lucien Rodriguez, guys like that. All that future Larry Holmes victims besides Rigetti. And Zanon was one of those dudes. He was a pesky fighter, had no chin, but he had a good jab, and he was awkward. And Quarry was, interviewed before the fight, and he was like, I saw, he was like, why are you coming back? You have a really good thing as an announcer, yada, yada, yada. And he was like, oh, he was like, I watched Dwayne Bobbitt against Ken Norton, and I saw that the fight lasted 87 seconds and Bobbitt made X amount of money. Well, I want some of that money. He was like, then I saw that Ali went to 15 rounds with Alfredo Evangelista. And I'm like, you know what? If I can get in shape, I can do that too. Like, he was like, I think I still have one more thing to prove. And then they were like, it's all about money too. He was like, yeah, it's totally about money. I see how much you guys are making. I want a piece of that pie. He was like, I want that, But he sounds articulate. He sounds a little bit slower. You can tell his voice is slurred a little bit. He's more, he's more relaxed, if that makes sense, right? And he probably totally shouldn't be in the ring. Like, he has no business, but he's still popular. His last fight was only 2 years ago, and Don King is promoting it, so of course he's going to exploit it. So anyways, the fight happens. That fight happens on the undercard of the vacant title fight between Ken Norton and Jimmy Young. So Quarry looks like shit in this fight, bro. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. It's bad. He can't do anything. Zanon, who's an annoying guy to fight anyways, is just pesking around and jabbing him, doing whatever the hell he wants with him. He's just landing combinations at will. Quarry's not even trying to block a punch. He looks like Rocky Balboa when he fought Antonio Tarver. Just can't do anything. He's just getting smacked around. It's really pathetic to see. Finally, in round 8 or not, whatever, 7, 8, whenever it was, he catches up to him. And he lands just one of those sloppy hooks or something, and Zanon just crumbled like a tree. Somehow Quarry miraculously wins the fight, right? but he looks like shit. He knows he looks bad, and he immediately retires. He was like, I don't. He was disgusted with himself, and rightfully so. You know what I mean? It was not a good performance. He's lucky he won that. But he had all these other plans. He wanted to fight Holmes. He wanted to fight this guy, that guy, yada yada. You know, Ali again. But all of that fell through. So at this point, again, you think, okay, this is going to be the end of it. Quarry's done. You know, hopefully he can just preserve his brain and go off and be a commentator for the rest of it, you know, for his career. But wasn't meant to be.
You know, a lot of stuff happened right around this time. Big shit in boxing. So I'll try to make it concise as much as I can. But so Quarry retired 1977 after the Lorenzo Zanon fight, and he had been retired. And in 1982, as many people know, unfortunately, Ray Mancini fought Kim Duk-gu, fight that ended very tragically. And a number of the circumstances around the fight after Kim Duk-gu's death had officials and fans and writers and pundits and etc. calling for God knows what in boxing, more of this, less of that. I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? But the point is that there was this big rush to do something. And one of the things that had been done right around this time was that I think I'm almost positive it was the WBC started making for world title fights pre-fight. They made mandatory pre-fight EEGs, electroencephalograms, you know, brainwave scans. And so while it was kind of a band-aid and didn't really do anything, it later on led to greater testing, which is good. But during this time, it was a big window dressing type of fucking jerk off bullshit. It didn't mean anything. A bunch of these entities were saying, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. One of the entities that said they were going to conduct this investigation was Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated got well, I can't remember the third fighter off the top of my head, but they got Tex Cobb, Randall Tex Cobb, and Jerry Quarry, and a third fighter. And they basically conducted a whole series of neurological tests on these fighters to see what was going on. And then they also did brain scans, MRIs, to see what their brains looked like. Did that match the results, etc. And so basically what they had found out was that Jerry Quarry specifically, the test that they conducted, he did okay, like he passed them, but that when they actually looked at his brain scan, that it had shown a serious amount of atrophying. It had shriveled, which we now know is an early sign of CTE, like a very clear sign of CTE now. The problem is that well, let me reword that slightly. You don't know whether or not you can have CT until they literally crack open your brain and look at it. So you got to be dead.
Like Chris Benoit.
Precisely. Yeah. So let me reword that and say that brain atrophying and those kinds of changes that they're seeing, we now are able to recognize as something as far more sinister than they did at the time. At the time, they were like, well, we don't know what to make of it. You know, he's passing the tests. And that was about it. But that's the problem, is that even the fucking neurologist who conducted the tests was saying a bunch of shit like, yeah, you don't really see brain damage in boxers. You only see them in the bruising fighters and in the brawlers, which is like, fucking, not going to use that word, bad. It's stupid. Doesn't make any sense.
It's ignorant.
And that's a neurologist. That's the dude conducting the tests. And so already you're in a place right now in 1983, that year is going to be key here in just a moment, where in 1983, it's already recognized that Jerry Quarry's in a bad shape. And the fact that, because Muhammad Ali, right around the Berbick fight, people were like, they got to send him to the Mayo Clinic. They did. And Muhammad Ali started going, why are you singling me out? Why are you picking on me? Why don't you go test Jerry Quarry? He specifically said, why don't you go test Jerry Quarry? So they did. So they Sports Illustrated put him in this study. So the problem was that despite the fact that you and I and most people now recognize the study as like, Jesus Christ, at the time it was encouraging Jerry Quarry to keep fighting because he passed the tests. This was in the spring of 1983. Jerry
kind of
Quarry
like
came back in
Ali,
August.
it's incredible. Kind of like when Ali initially passed his test for Larry Holmes, and everyone's like, well, he probably shouldn't be fighting, but you know, he passed the test, so whatever. And it just encourages them, yeah.
It's
And he had 2 fights in '83.
it's the same thing that Joe Messi was trying to argue for years back. And thank goodness they did not let him, he was like, I'm passing the
Right.
test. And they were like, you got a brain bleed, bro. Like, so I mean, like it's the same type of, but luckily they did not let Joe Messi go through and keep fighting, with that. At least I don't think.
But
Maybe he did once. I don't know.
I think that's
But
what actually killed him. Not to go veer off course too much, but that's what killed Kid Hakeem too.
I
Kid
believe
Hakeem,
so.
yeah, Kid Hakeem Anafadas. I can't pronounce his last
Anifa
name.
Woshe.
Yes, Anifa Woshe. Junior bantamweight, very, very talented fighter, suffered a bad brain injury against Robert Quiroga, another sad fate.
Yep.
And got caught up in some stuff after his career ended. And got deported back to was it Nigeria?
I think so.
Yeah, got deported back.
Not positive, but yeah.
Got deported back, and people found out he was trying to fight again because who was going to check up on him? Was going to regulate that, right? And they said he had a sparring session, went to go take a shower, complained of a headache, died.
Yep. And it was widely suspected that it was a previous there was the previous brain bleed. I mean, how could it not be?
He had no business trying to ever fight.
How could it not be? You know what I mean? And so back to Jerry Quarry here. The point is that, all of this sounded, I think at the time, like well-meaning, like, oh, Mancini, Kim, oh, this is bad. But regardless, it actually had the opposite effect, and it encouraged Jerry Quarry to get back in. That was the spring of 1983. He fought in August, a few months later. So it was clear, though, that he was going to have a tough time getting licensed, at least, and nobody's going to be televising this shit. I mean, it was embarrassing. So he got in with fighters who, themselves barely even should have been in a boxing ring, which was pretty much the entire point,
Yeah, I'm absolute palookas, man. And the backstories on those fights too are just absolute fiascos. It's just sad, all right?
Corey, I mean, you brought up Aaron Pryor earlier, but they're very similar stories to the end of his career.
Yeah. Like Quarry at this point, he'd been through 2 divorces. I think like he had no money to his name, lost all of it, various things, suffered from alcohol addiction, cocaine addiction. His career as an announcer was long gone. Like everything was just kind of falling apart. All he knew again was fighting. That's what was his back end, and he still was a popular name because he was popular throughout his life. And I mean, boxing's one of those sports that no matter how broken down, beat up, screwed up, no business being in the ring you are, there's some place with some shady ass commission and some phony doctor will give you the flimsiest exam and go, yeah, sure, whatever, to get you in there because they can take money out of you. You know what I mean? And that's what was happening. And make lies about it too. Oh, you win this fight and you do this one. Hey man, you back in there. We're gonna put you in with a contender eventually. Oh, before you know it, you're gonna be on TV fighting Larry Holmes. Oh, okay.
Yeah, like constantly dangling that carrot. And on top of that, there was his dad almost the entire time.
He never left his side. Oh yeah, always encouraging Mom because Mike Quarry was still going on at this point too. His career had just ended the year before that. So you move on from there, and then those were just embarrassing fiascos. But I mean, they're whatever, they go off, right? And then Quarry looks like he retires again. So he's retired. There's rumbling of a fight that was supposed to happen in 1990, which doesn't because Quarry got into a fist fight with the promoter before the fight happened and got cut. The promoter caught him with a hook or something. There's some argument about the fight. I forgot what the argument was, but they got into an argument. The promoter punched Quarry in the eye. Quarry gets cut. Quarry's manager, trainer, got beat up by the promoter's brothers. It was a whole fiasco.
I mean, it's absolute, it's insane. And even at this point in late 80s, it was already like agreed upon in the boxing community that Jerry Quarry was in bad shape. Everybody already knew it. Like this was not a secret. So it's really unfortunate that it even still went on after this.
But it still did, and you know why? Because of
George Foreman.
That's what George Foreman did. Like what Mike Tyson kind of did when he made, when he had that exhibition with Roy Jones.
Yeah, now everybody's trying to get in with exhibitions.
Everybody was trying,
which is great. Hey, dude, you know what? If they can do it more safely or whatever, and they're
I'm
going to
not
do it anyway,
exactly.
then.
This is, I mean, these are different things, but kind of I'm saying the same way how everyone started jumping out of the
But
woodworks.
yeah. But yes.
But this was different. These were all guys wanting to make professional fight comebacks because they see George doing it, and now they think they can do it too, and they want to have legitimate fights and try to fight for the title. Quarry in 1992 decided, hey, I think I can come back. You know what I mean? Um,
Our homie Ron Kramer is on the case.
Yes. So Jerry Quarry in October of 1992. Mind you, I'm 8 years old at this point. All right. Jerry Quarry has no business fighting while I'm alive. All right. I was born in 1984. His career should have been done a decade before that. So just to put things in perspective. All right. I was in second or third grade when this fight took place. And you're older than me, so and like anyways, Quarry ends up going to Colorado, Aurora, Colorado, right? That's where
the Holiday Inn Trade Center.
Yes, to fight a guy by the name of Ron Kramer, undistinguished professional fighter who wouldn't do much after this anyways. But whatever. A lot of and the thing is, this is a place. There's no state commission over there because no one in their right mind.
He got that Uriah Grant win.
Okay.
He got that Uriah Grant over Hearns win. He got that Pazienza Duran.
Exactly. But this is even more sad though when you think about it. Because Quarry had no business. By this point, he's already suffering from the early onset of brain damage and other stuff. He's slowed down to a pulp. He has no business being in there. But there's a bunch of janky ass promoters who want to promise him, hey man, you win this one. We know people that are in the camp of George Foreman. We can put this in for you. We'll get the fight for you. He thought he was really going to fight Foreman. They're making a bunch of BS for him, telling him the shit like, oh yeah, we have documentary deals in for you, comeback things, movie plans, all this shit. He gets all these ideas in his head. He's going to make this big comeback. He doesn't look like he's in bad shape. He always kept himself in shape, even out of retirement. And he figures, yeah, a couple of wins over there. I'm still popular. I'm going to get myself a big George Foreman fight. And, this fight's on YouTube, right? For years, it was always just kind of talked about. One of those fights, people weren't sure if it was recorded or not. And it finally surfaced, probably the last 8 years.
It's so sad, dude.
And yeah, it's totally handheld camera stuff, but you can see what's happening. And it is sad, man. It is not beyond sad. Quarry, the fight goes, 6 rounds. It went 6 rounds, and Quarry just got his ass kicked, man. Like maybe the first minute of the fight, dare I say, he looked okay. Like he landed a left hook, and he still knew how to kind of throw one. But like he had no balance. He just couldn't move. He's slow as hell. No reflexes, no anything. All he could do is still take a punch and throw a wild left hook once a minute. And this dude Kramer beat the crap out of him, man. It's really bad. You see him just landing uppercuts and punches at will. Quarry's head is like a swivel, just getting knocked around. And the fight goes 6 rounds. Quarry loses an easy decision, right? And afterwards, God damn it. Man, because this bothers me, bro. It really does to think about this happening to him. You know what I mean? Quarry has broken teeth. His teeth were knocked out. Both of his eyes were all damaged and screwed up. His nose was broken. His face was just like he just got the shit kicked out of him. Like someone mugged him on the street.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, exactly. He was at the ATM and somebody just stole on him.
He got $1,050 for that. That's how much he got to get his brain kicked in even worse. And that really exasperated everything else that went with him. Because after this, he was gone. Like his life just went. And he didn't need that. And I really hate when bullshit people in this sport get around and be able to do bullshit like that, because look what happened to him, man. It's fucked up. That was squeezing blood from a stone for no reason. There was nothing left of him, and they just threw him in there, and he just got
literally
And I'm not blaming it on Kramer.
No, he went in and he did what he was supposed to do.
What he's supposed to do. Nothing on him. You know what I mean? Anyone else would have probably done the same thing, but it's just pathetic how they had used Quarry like that.
It is, dude. Shortly after that fight, he wound up being incapacitated to the point where he needed 24-hour care from his older brother, James, who took care of him from that point on till almost his death. And it got to the point where Jerry Quarry was unable to form long-term memories. There was one story about how they moved houses because he lived with his brother and they moved. Mm-hmm. And it took him months and months and months to adjust to the new environment because he kept going outside for things that used to be outside at the old house. You know, he was a smoker also. So he was like you know, I think that he continued drinking. I mean, it was bad, dude. It was real bad. I know he made public appearances and that he was at the Hall of Fame a handful of times.
I know
But
that they showed video of him at the West Coast Hall of Fame when he was getting inducted, and that's really, it was sad to watch that too. Like, I mean, you know, you can, with people with dementia, like you could tell he was like kind of enjoying being around crowds,
yeah,
but like, yeah, he
it's
didn't really know what he was at, and the fact that his brother was having him sign an autograph to someone really bugged me out because he's telling him, Quarry, write a circle, put a line right there. That's a Q. There you go, make a U. And I'm like, dude, first off, who asked him for an autograph, right? Because I'd love to kick his ass for that. Second,
what even good is that autograph? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is here's my scribbled fucking Jerry. I mean,
you know, yeah, I don't. It's sad to watch. The whole thing is just sad. But it did raise awareness to his condition, which
it
I'm
did.
not sure a lot of people were aware how bad off he was. Like there were rumblings. I'm
Yeah.
sure few people knew, but this
He
really
became like
raised
a known
awareness.
sad
Yeah,
case in the
totally.
world, in the boxing circles. Yeah.
He was like one of the first ones where people took notice and they're like, holy shit, because
And
you see him too, and he was only around 50 when this happened, bro. And you put that in perspective, Bernard Hawkins was having his last professional fight around 50, 51 years old. You know what I mean? And Quarry was just, like he couldn't remember. They asked him, oh, do you know what day it is? No. Do you know what month it is? Who cares? And he would sit there and he would drink a Coke because he likes drinking Coca-Cola, But then at one moment you see him throw a left hook because he still knew how to do that. Like they asked him, and it's I don't know.
yeah, it's pretty sad, dude. He obviously had slid so quickly.
Yeah.
One of the other good things that came of it, we've seen a number of organizations, Ring 8, Ring 10. I know there's been a couple other rings. I don't mean to be like patronizing here. I just don't know all of them. But regardless,
There are a lot of them.
what's that?
There are a lot of them.
There are, and the main aim for them, as far as I can tell, is to take care of fighters who have, like, the families of fighters who have fallen, or fighters who are retired and need help. And that was one thing that Jimmy Quarry, his older brother, did,
Yeah.
was they helped set up a foundation, Jimmy Quarry Foundation, that basically was for fighters who had gotten messed up, that needed help and needed care after their career. But unfortunately, there was not a happy ending. There never really is with any of this stuff.
No.
And unfortunately, in 1999, Jimmy Quarry Jerry Quarry became incapacitated to the point where his body failed him and he had a heart attack and died.
Yeah. Sad, tragic, man.
At
Should
50,
still be
what,
around today.
52? You said, right? 52 or something, just
53 around there.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a young guy.
It's tragic, man. Very, very tragic. And but you still remember fondly today. You just remember it as a cautionary tale, but you still remember fondly. But to move on now.
Yeah, how
Another
could it get worse from here?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
could it
How's it
get
get
worse?
worse? Well, get ready, guys.
Yeah,
Now
maybe
here's
take a breather, but this is about to go
yeah,
downhill a little bit.
because he wasn't the only brother to suffer the same fate.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Jack Quarry, the dad, he's the mainstay in all of this. I think that was one thing that kind of, I think, saved Jerry, was that Jerry was successful and Jerry was good. And that I think that kind of helped him steer clear of Jack Quarry's wrath a little bit. Like he had just enough success.
Totally.
Mike Quarry did not. He'd not the same kind of success. And I think he was far more in Jack Quarry's path as far as
Well, Mike
abuse.
Quarry was, he obviously like looked up to Jerry, adored him, and everything like that. Wanted to be like him, and they were close in age. But I mean, Jerry was obviously an older brother, but like they, enough that for the fact that Mike was definitely old enough to learn the family business very quickly, and not only that, he was, close enough in age where he can become Jerry's main sparring partner. And in the world of Jack Quarry, you don't spar. You're not there to learn experience. Every fight's a fight for your life. So these kids were bashing their brains in already at a very young age. All right. Jerry Quarry started boxing around 5, 6 years old. So did Mike. And right away, the backyard brawls, because everything had to be settled with a fight in the Quarry household, became norm. And soon enough, Mike Quarry basically followed his brother into the pro ranks as well.
Yeah, he started his amateur career far later. So Jerry Quarry started his amateur career at 5. But Mike Quarry started his at 16 or 17, which is obviously a big, big difference. But even so, I think that also illustrates, the difference between how Mike ended up and how Jerry ended up. That's basically, we'll get into it more here in a moment, but it's like Jerry's career was, this. And Mike Quarry's career was like he took the same shit, but in this.
Against it, yeah.
It was
like
far more
there were
condensed.
gaps in Jerry's career, like even in the 70s after like near the Norton fight. And then after the Norton fight, a couple of years later, Zanone. Then he waited till the 80s. And then the Cranmer fight almost 9 years later. And like you said, man, Mike Quarry didn't really take breaks like that. Later on in his career, he might have like a 6 or 8 month break after taking a bad beating or something, but there was not really any extended lulls in his career.
At those points where he did have like 6 or 8 months off, they were described as, a long layoff.
Yes.
And so I guess we should probably credit to where it's due. Gosh, what freaking forum is this again? I can't even remember.
Sato Boxing.
Sato, yeah, Sato Boxing, Sato, whatever. So Bill Paxton, not the actor who passed away a few years ago. Game over, man. Not that guy. But no, Bill Paxton, the guy who wrote The Fearless Harry Greb a number of years ago. He's actually has a profile on Cyber Boxing Zone. Extremely underrated website, by the way, if you're looking for old school boxing shit. But regardless, that dude, it sounded like he was writing he was putting together like a long form article or something for some publication on Mike Quarry. And so he had a shitload of information in this thread about Mike Quarry on Sato Boxing. It's a really long thread, takes a while to read, and it obviously took him a long time to put together. It's kind of an eyesore. There's a shitload of just random quotes that are like, they're not even really quotes. So like I said, it's kind of tough to read, but it's very illuminating, very enlightening, and really sad, really illustrates a lot of the sad shit that Mike Quarry had to go through as a fighter. Like I said, it's kind of like Jerry Quarry and Mike Quarry went through about the same amount of punishment. It's just that Mike Quarry's career was far more condensed. And so Mike Quarry, after turning pro, he really put together a decent string for an early pro, for a young pro, not a very old guy. He put together, gosh, I'd have to count him up, and I didn't count him up, but I would guess something it's like 28-0 or something like that. Here, let's just go to Bob Foster's thingy so I don't have to count him up. But
no, he had good names on his record too at that point. You got to remember the light heavyweight division from the late 60s going into the early 70s. Bob Foster obviously ruled the roost, and no one was going to knock him off of his perch. And the contenders that he was dealing with were good fighters, very, very good fighters. I want to put them, I'd say they're a step below from what we saw Saad Muhammad, Dwight Muhammad Kawi, Spinks era and stuff like that, clearly. But still very, very tough guys. And after a few wins, Quarry was already starting to get into the mix with some of those guys like Andy Kendall, guys like Jimmy the Cat Dupree, who's extremely underrated, and so on.
Yeah, so I looked, and just to count him up, so I'm not, pulling bullshit out of my ass.
There was a lot of wins he had.
Yeah, he was 35-0. Yeah. And I mean, granted, a lot of these 35 victories were not, very good fighters. Like you generally are not getting to 35-0 as like a contender / prospect with a whole bunch of really good wins. It's just the nature of the beast. But another thing about Mike Quarry's style was that Jerry Quarry was a bruiser. He had a very good left hook, not a massive left hook, like not really a one-shot type of guy, but he could hurt you. He could definitely hurt you. Mike Quarry, not so much. He probably wasn't really going to hurt you. He could hit just sharp enough so that it could deter you.
And he was a boxer too. He was quick on his feet. Unlike
Quarry. He was definitely more of a stylist. He could hit just sharp enough to keep you honest, but you weren't going to be afraid of his punching power. And that wound up being a big problem later on. if he had punching power, it's tough to say because he might not have had the same style. But hey, dude, if he had punching power, at least against Bob Foster, all due respect to Bob, didn't have the greatest chin. And if you could catch him, you could maybe get him out. I mean, especially if you're Joe Frazier. But regardless, yeah, Mike Quarry, he put together a lot of fairly good wins, unbeaten.
He was the NABF champion.
Yeah, and back when that actually did kind of mean something. And so, going in against Bob Foster, though, Bob Foster, just an absolute murderous puncher, murderous, ridiculous, the kind of guy where, like, when he starts throwing, like, when he gets pissed,
yes,
and throws hard, it's scary. I brought this up on a recent episode. I don't remember which or why, but the Vicente Rondon knockout. Yeah, that's Bob Foster pissed off.
Yep.
Vicente Rondon had talked a bunch of shit. They felt like Bob Foster felt cheated. He felt like they fucked with him leading into this fight. And he was like, I'm going to kill this guy. And he almost did. When you watch him swing in that fight, it's like frightening. A guy that's just a string bean looking wowza. Anyway, so that's unfortunately what Mike Quarry got the full brunt of.
And Quarry wasn't doing bad in the fight, man. Like, Foster was biding his time, but Foster again wasn't a guy that was fleet of foot himself. He was a stalker. Kind of in that. If you see someone like Hearns was quicker than him, but like a similar style with the hand down, the left hand down drawn, trying to lead you in, jabbing from the hip, jabbing over there, just trying to bide his time so he can engage you, so he can land his big right hand, left hook, but he's trying to box you at the same time. And Foster was such a tall ass light heavyweight, so lanky, it was hard to get in on him. And one of his punches hurt. And not even like his knockout punches. I'm talking, if he jabbed you in the face, that shit was gonna hurt you badly. So, anyways, Foster, Quarry wasn't looking bad. Like, he was getting a little too ambitious though in the fight. I would say. Like, he landed a couple of combinations on Foster.
Sticking around just a little too long.
And he did the Ali shuffle a couple of times. Like, he was flipping around. He was dropping his hands and starting to goof off with him, And Foster, I want to say he was looking old, but he was, was like, he was
like 65 fights in or something like that. I mean, or maybe 55 or whatever. But he
was a little bit slower too at that point too. And if you watch him, man, he looked a little like his trunks looked like they were like all raggedy and old. He looked like from a different era. You know what I mean?
But yeah, those were like the replacement trunks, and he'd lost some pounds or something.
But anyways, Quarry got a little too ambitious, and then in round 4, as he tried to, he felt like he was landing a little bit. He can get a little bit more rumble a little bit with Foster, which is the all-time dumbest move. That one sequence that everyone that's watched highlight knockouts have seen. He throws like a right hand or something, and he comes back with a left hook. Pow! And is the hardest, most ridiculous hook you will ever see in your life, because Quarry just splat out, like just gone, Eyes rolled in the back of his head, collapses unconscious, clean unconscious. There's no movement, anything. And as Bob Foster says it, he looked down. Quarry's eyes were, he saw them first, and they rolled in the back of his head, and he saw pure white, like he was gone. Foster, who was always a very stoic guy, didn't say much and seemed kind of indifferent if he knocked you out or not, was clearly shook, and he said so. He went to his trainer, his manager, and told him, he was like, listen, I think I killed this kid. Oh my God, I'm freaked out. His manager, who was an extremely cold, I forgot his name off the top of my head, but a former fighter himself from a different era and clearly didn't give a shit, said business is business, and shrugged his shoulders. Like, that's, yeah.
If you look at
cold-blooded,
cold-blooded, yeah, both the video and the photo make it look like Bob's pissed, almost like he's stepping over him, like, yeah, motherfucker, which is like some real cold ass shit, considering the knockout you just saw. Like, that's some, like, to step over somebody like that and do it. But yeah, he said later on that he wasn't going like, yeah, bitch. He was like, are you okay? Like, he was like, holy fuck. And no,
it's crazy because, like, you see the commotion in the ring, and Quarry's head is like, when people are getting into the ring to try to aid him, you see Quarry's head kind of slightly bounce off the
canvas. Because the ring's so fucking spongy. Yeah, it's like boom, boom, boom.
Well, yeah, he looks like he's dead. You would think it was. I mean, I don't know how I'd react if I was ringside for that. I'd probably throw up. Like, I don't know. It was bad. It was one of those knockouts, and unfortunately, a young Quarry, who was very young when that happened, his career never really recovered from that.
It really didn't.
But I mean, that's the type of knockout that just
it really didn't. And you could totally understand why. Because I mean, like,
well, that's a
anyway,
knockout that can legit give you brain damage. Like,
yeah, dude,
that would kill some people. That was bad.
like we're gonna spend all our time like describing this
Yeah,
knockout,
no,
but
but
it
like,
was
no,
that
man, when he
bad.
knocked him out and his head snapped off the canvas, man, that was.
It was that bad. It was
Yeah.
honestly that bad. And it's one of those things where it's like heads like bounces off the canvas type of shit. Just like, holy shit. And yeah, dude, his career, it's just, you could understand how a career could not be the same after that. He comes back, to his credit, and I guess to his dad's credit too, takes 6 months off and comes back, but can't manage more than a draw against a dude who's not even 500. And this winds up being just kind of the theme throughout his career, unfortunately, dude. It's not just like, yeah, dude, you get knocked out by Bob Foster. So what? It's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's like there's no shame in that. That doesn't ruin your career. Apart from the physical effects, it doesn't ruin your career. It's you got knocked out. Everybody gets knocked out by Bob Foster. It's okay. But it was that after that, it was inconsistency. He couldn't, the wins that he was getting were generally against fighters who weren't very good. And then it was like they would put him in against somebody who was totally supposed to kick their ass, and then he would like get a draw.
Yeah.
And then he'd go on and he'd get knocked out in his next fight. And then he'd string together a couple more, that kind of stuff. And it was just up and down. And it became clear very, very quickly that after that knockout to Bob Foster, he wasn't even going to be competitive with the upper end of the division at all.
Huh. He made rumblings kind of close. He ends up fighting Mike Rosman, a future light heavyweight champion, and ends up scoring a big decision win over him, probably an upset at the time. But then again, like you said, man, you can't stay consistent. After he loses him, he wins a bunch of win fights against various guys, man, various records, whatever it is, but not like any like top contenders or like future contenders or anything. And by the time he ends up stepping up again, man, he loses to various dudes. Like he loses Chris Finnegan, he loses a rematch to Andy Kendall, a guy he beat earlier. He loses to Pierre Fourier, who was an extremely tough fight from South Africa and the only person that was able to take Foster to distance as champion. And but that was the theme, like you said. He'd have a string of wins, and then he'd end up losing. Like he'd have a step up fight against somebody like a rising contender or whatever, and then end up losing it. What really ended up getting bad for him though was that like by the mid 70s, around 1975, when Jerry Quarry was really starting to should have retired himself, that's when the wheels started to come off for him. He loses the Yaki Lopez, which is obviously no shame in that, but like he loses to Lopez. He loses to another tough fighter by the name of Pedro Soto, who became an undersized heavyweight soon after. And, and then he fights, he starts losing to other guys too from there. Like he ends up fighting Mike Rosman, loses a rematch to him. And like, he's still a commendable name. He still like has, the win. But the thing with him is that the way, like you said, the whole condensed thing, after he would lose, he would pull together such a quick string of wins against various guys that he would easily be able to go right back on television because he was still a name. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, we could put him on ABC. We'll put him against so-and-so. Oh, we'll bring him to the Garden. That's still a good name against Rossman for a third fight. Oh, because there was always the promise, hey, you beat this guy, you get this big fight, you win that fight, then you're going to fight for the title, or you're going to fight a big money fight against yada yada, or this one or that one. And Quarry was just like, I'm popular. I'm the one that has to hold the mantle of the family now because Jerry had retired at this point. And so when you think about it too, this is the dad factor. His dad, now Jack has all of his attention on Mike. He can just devote everything there and put the same thing. No quitting the Quarry, no quitting the Quarry. Take this fight, take that fight, blah, 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 And the wheels started coming off, bro, badly.
And one of the things that really, I don't want to say it like rattles me, but just bothers me about Mike Quarry's case, about his life, about his career, is that it's so microcosmic, so representative of so many other cases in boxing. Because it's like, dude, you have, I know we're skipping around a slight bit here, but it's just like, so Mike Quarry can't stay consistent with his wins. But despite the fact that he can't keep winning, and it's like he's win some, lose some, win some, lose some. And on top of that, it was like he would get stopped too. It wasn't like he was like just losing decisions, but losing close decisions and like fighting his ass off or something like that. He was totally getting stopped here, cut there, flayed open on
Just
his.
like Jerry, he was losing his boyish face, man. You could see the scar tissue
Yep.
everywhere. The nose was getting gnarled up. Yeah.
You can see that he's a very fresh faced, he's got the 1970s rat stash, the mustache and shit, but he's like a fresh faced young dude. He's a pretty good looking guy. And then a couple years later, he's fucked up, man. He's got scar tissue all over, and he even notes it like pre-fight. He's talking about all the scar tissue he has, and his face looks messed up, etc. And like, but the whole point is that like it was obvious by this time what the score was. He could not stay competitive. He could not stay competitive against the upper edge of the division, even the middle portion of the division. And then on top of that,
70s.
yeah, dude, it was clear that he didn't have the punching power to salvage these fights that he was out of. Like Jerry Quarry, he did wind up having the punching power to win some of these fights. Mike did not. And so he would be losing these fights, win some, lose some. And nonetheless, the promoters all over the US were still just like, yeah, we'll take you. We'll put you on TV. We'll do this, we'll do that. And that's the thing, is that it kind of exposed the case of Mike Quarry, exposed so much of like the nasty underbelly of boxing,
So to give you a prime example, like saying, yeah, we'll still use you. He goes through this series of fights with Rossman. All right. One of them is interesting because it was scheduled as an 11-round fight, just so there couldn't be any draws or any like even rounds or whatever. So he gets stopped in that fight. That was the one that really like, the wheels fell off of it. And Quarry was just like, damn it, I thought that was gonna be his last big chance to really push himself to a top contendership, another championship. But we're talking now that we're getting into 1978. All right, Quarry is already a thing of the past. He even looks out of place here. Like he said, his face is misshapen. He's just, from a bygone era, the early 70s, him and his brother. They have no business still fighting there. But he's still young too, man. I don't even know if he's like even 30 at this point. He's still, in his late 20s. But he's had such a long career and can not only that, add in all the crazy sparring sessions and exhibitions him and Jerry put together where they beat the holy hell out of each other for countless rounds and years. And you're talking about a dude on very, very dulled legs, you're like, he shouldn't be fighting. So after he loses to Rossman again, there was talk of him fighting Michael Spinks, future light heavyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist, the whole deal. And Arum was going to make that fight for television. He was, Bob Arum, like she just mentioned, he was all excited about it. But before that, they were going to take a tune-up fight against a guy by the name of Pete McIntyre. Pete McIntyre probably is best known as being on the highlight reel of the Matthew San Muhammad fight, where Muhammad hits him with that right hand. McIntyre throws a punch and goes down, and Muhammad puts his hands up, right? McIntyre didn't have a great record at all. You know what I mean? He was kind of a journeyman, but he could really punch. He was a strong guy, and he knew how to fight a little bit, all right? And when he got brought in to fight Quarry, he only had a 6-8 record, but I've never seen the fight, but by all accounts, he beats the shit out of Quarry. Like, it's bad. And Quarry wasn't ready for it. He just gets brutalized, beat up. McIntyre knocks him around and ends up knocking him out. Like, it was a bad knockout. And afterwards, instead of just taking the net and taking clearly what was there and saying, you know what, we're losing this type of guy now, we need to retire. No, Jack Quarry says we were set up. This guy McIntyre was a beast. We didn't know how big he was and how strong he was. This was a whole setup and blah, 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 blah. We didn't need this. If we knew what was going to happen, we would have never taken the fight. Not only that, Bob Arum still says, guess what? It's okay. Just have him rest up a little bit. I can still have him fight Michael Spinks. Don't worry about it.
So you have the initial ickiness of his career in the first place, the nastiness of his father handling it, and then the straight up fucking disgusting promoter willing to still put him in against the dude who at light heavyweight, Michael Spinks, was a fucking killer, bro. And on top of that, this was not even, I think, 2 years of him after him winning gold in the 19...
Spinks was only around 8 or 9 pro bouts in at this point.
So this wasn't even 2 years of him winning a gold in the 1976 Olympics. He would have fucking slayed him, absolutely broken him in half. And they knew that. That's the whole point. That's why he was going to put him in there anyway. But that's what I mean, is that like it really exposed the underbelly or like the nasty part of what was going on. And I don't mean to say
fight never came off.
Yeah, dude, it would have been super ugly, and shit like that still happens now. I don't mean to suggest it doesn't, but it could have gone under the radar far more easily then than it could now. And
How many people even would have known that he got knocked out by McIntyre like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, bad.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's so representative of the things that were going on in his career. Like we said, it became much earlier than that. It became obvious that he wasn't going to be a contender. He wasn't in that position.
Not
Yet
anymore, especially. No, he was done. Yeah.
but I mean, it does raise other questions, though. It kind of raises other, I guess, philosophical questions about, like, all right, well, I've said this before, but like the world needs ditch diggers, right? Just like boxing needs journeymen. It needs people who are going to lose. If somebody's going to win, somebody's got to lose.
Yeah.
And so at what point is like it okay? At what point you're a 37-year-old fighter who's 10-49. You've gotten knocked out 31 times.
Yeah.
At what point, I'm just making up numbers, that this is not my quarry, but at what point is it enough? At what point have you fulfilled your role? At what point have you done your fucking service to this sport?
He never.
You know what I'm saying? Like at
never
what
really did.
point
Yeah.
is it enough? And we already know that for Jack Quarry, there was no point that it was enough. But it does make me think those things. It makes me think like the sport is filled with these fighters. It's filled with fighters who can't get a fucking win. And so, I mean, at what point is it okay for them to just say, you know what, I think we're good? And there's no easy answer.
You're right, man. It's really well way to put it. Think about this too. It's like from that link that from that thread that you were talking about, the whole thing about Corey's career. One thing that really stood out to me was after the Rossman fight, I think his last one when he got stopped by Rossman. Jerry Quarry was in the locker room with him, and there was reporters in there. And Jerry Quarry like begged him. He was like, "You need to retire. Tell me you're gonna retire." And Mike Quarry was like, "I just want to go out with a win. Let me go out with a win and I'll retire." And Jerry was like, "No, I don't want to see you take this anymore. Like I'm literally crying ringside, seeing you get your ass kicked. Like you gotta stop, please, for God's sake, Mike, just end it." And they said that they both started crying, and Mike was like, "Okay, Jerry, for you, I'll do it. For you, bro, I'll stop fighting." And initially, it looked like it might happen because, like we said, man, he was retired for at least 8 months or so, and then he started getting the itch again. And you know why? Because his dad was crowing in his ear, "Oh, you need to come back. You can still do it. You're still young, blah, blah, blah." And then his dad was quoted for his comeback. "Oh, no, no, no. Mike still has a lot of fight left in him. I mean, he's not retired yet. Not at all. There's no quitting a quarry." That same stupid saying that's been over and over and over. And that's when he started coming back. And that's when the ass kickings really started taking place. Because his dad was always in his ear telling him, "You can still get this fight. Hey, I got another fight for you here. Hey, I can take this. I can do that." Because his dad was his manager. You know what I mean? He knew nothing else.
He was that's another layer of it that's so nasty, is that his dad was out there wheeling and dealing for him like he was some sort of like filthy manager, like the epitome of some fucking scum sucking manager that's like, totally exploiting. And it was his fucking father. And he's out there going all over to, like, you and I both know it might not be as clear to people who are less apt to fucking reading about the history shit all the time. And it's not as common now, but in other eras, those other circuits, like the Southern Circuit, the fucking Midwestern Circuit, you know what I mean? We joke about this stuff often. Gray Johnson, we joke about this shit all the time. But in other eras, like, these were legitimate circuits. These were like, there were a lot of promoters in South Texas. There were a lot of promoters in Alabama. Like, that sounds like some crazy shit now. You'd be like, there's no fucking boxing promoters in Alabama. Back then there were. Point being, Jack Quarry, Mike Quarry, and Jack Quarry's father was wheeling and dealing among all of these nasty fucking promoters who were like on the carnival circuits and shit like that, trying to nuzzle them up. And you read this fucking thread, and it's like, it becomes obvious. Look, it's a very detailed thread. It takes a long time to get through, but you start realizing that, bro, he's fighting for like $900, $1,200. And then on top of that, a common theme starts to be that he starts fighting for, like, low money, but they're letting him drink as much as he can. Low money, but they're paying for his hotel and his meals and his drinks. Like, in that type of shit, until it starts finally evolving into, like, he's less worried about his boxing career and he starts traveling around doing exhibitions.
Yeah. Same thing happens in wrestling too, to a degree.
Yeah, exactly. It was like the exact same thing, except for without the wrestling.
Exactly. It's really, really bad, man. And you can, again, combine that and all these different promoters trying to drag him in for various things, because he was doing this exhibitions with his brother from earlier on, full combat karate. which I wasn't aware of.
Oh my God, I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
Yes, please hit me
He
with
was
it.
doing like early MMA, I guess. You know, I mean, whatever that promoted by Don Elbaum of all people. So you can imagine what kind of fiasco shit that involved in.
And with all, I'm sorry, but L-Bomb's, in here singing its praises and talking about Mike Quarry and how good he is and stuff like that. And I know Don L-Bomb's a very like beloved promoter in like the boxing circles, but dude, that's some pretty gross stuff, bro.
I mean, this is the same guy that when he promoted Sugar Ray's last fight against Joey Archer, one of them, he went up to Robinson and presented him a pair of gloves, really old pair of gloves he found, and said, Ray, these are your original pair of gloves from your first pro fight. Don't ask me how I found them, yada, yada, yada. Ray gets them all excited, starts tearing up, gets really emotional. The reporters ask, hey, Ray, put them on, man. Let's, take a photo, for the cameras. Ray starts to put them on. Elbon goes, no, 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 don't do it. Finds out they're two left gloves.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Like I said, and
these are the also to top it off, the cherry on top of the cake. He's the guy that got Don King. He gave him his introduction to boxing. He's the one that opened the door.
Perfect. Yeah. And like I said, these are the kinds of people who do wind up beloved in boxing circles. So it's
he opened up the door for Don King. You know what I mean? He's the one that helped him with that charity event back in the early 70s that started everything. So yeah. Thank you, Don.
Perfect, Mr. Elbaum. Thanks so much. And the karate. But no, for real though, as far as, all of the shaming aside, I need some of that karate footage. I need that footage, bro.
I'm very curious what was going on with that, but there was nothing in that thread that mentioned what was the results of that. Just Elbaum saying he wanted him for his shows because he knew Quarry was back in business. But after that, man, like you said, at the turn of the '80s, Quarry, like he was just a relic of the past, man. He looked nothing like he did. He's looked like an old, shambled, sad look of his former self. Clearly had no business fighting, but still getting opportunities here and there. And his last known fight, I would say, against a recognizable name, is a guy that you posted up on the Boxing History account a few times. Very tough fighter by the name of Bunny Johnson. And the winner of that fight apparently was going to get a big money fight with Tony Mundine. See, we're always going there. There's always something planned ahead if you can win this one.
Yeah.
Quarry was very excited because he was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Australia, a different location. And apparently there was an 18-year-old kid who's not named, and I'm not sure who it is, and I'm very curious who could have been, but there was an 18-year-old kid who was the promoter of this event.
They did name him, but I didn't look it up, and I was meaning to, but I couldn't remember. I just didn't have time to look it up. But yeah, dude, that was something that caught my eye when I was reading the thread where apparently Mike Quarry's talking about how the Bunny Johnson fight was put together in Australia by some kid who promoted the fight. He was 18 years old and put everything together, and he's singing his praises and telling him, saying he did a good job putting it together. And I'm like, what? Some 18-year-old kid, dude, like that's fucking crazy. But Bunny Johnson, he was a good fighter, but more of a good fighter who was like a good regional fighter. He was one of, if not the first, I'm not positive if he's the first, and I'd have to double check, but one of the first black British heavyweight champions, believe it or not. And that sounds crazy because that wasn't that long ago, but it's true. And nonetheless, he was a good fighter, but again, more of a kind of like a regional level fighter, not somebody who broke through into world contendership really. And somebody who was obviously very limited. And on their, best days or whatever, Bunny Johnson, Mike Quarry, probably a pretty decently matched fight, but not on this day. Definitely not on this day.
And Johnson had said before the fight that he was in tremendous shape because he knew what this fight represented. He was a little bit older than Quarry, but much more preserved, and definitely didn't have the mileage that Quarry did. And Quarry had no business again fighting in the '80s, let alone that he did fighting back in 1975. You know what I mean? So it was just a massacre, man. Johnson just beat the crap out of him and just beat him up, did as he pleased. Quarry was just by all accounts, just a glorified heavy bag. You know what I mean? Johnson kind of brutalized him, and after he stops him, Mike Quarry said again, "This is it. This is the end. No Mundine fight, no nothing. I have nowhere else to go." But according to BoxRec, he actually did. He came back a year later and still had one more fight after that. I don't know anything about it. don't really care to know anything about it, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know too much about it either. It was just
It
obviously a
wasn't even
very
mentioned in that thread either.
no, the thread is, I think, specifically aimed. So, like I said, you kind of had walked up and walked to the other room, but it was this thread that sounded like Bill Paxton, this author, was trying to put something together for an article or a long form piece or something about Mike Quarry. And obviously the main thread or whatever was that Jack Quarry had messed up his ambitions, had messed his sons up, or his drive to toughen them up had messed them up, basically. And so that was what a lot of this information comes from. But I didn't see anything about that last fight against a dude named Bluefort Spencer. Don't know him. And in any case,
I don't even know what Crystal City is. Where is that?
what's that?
I don't even know what Crystal City is. Was that Florida?
Crystal City. I would guess Florida, maybe fucking California or some shit. I don't even know. About to look right now. Okay, apparently it's in Virginia.
Okay.
Apparently it's in Virginia. But well, in any case,
There's a stand-up commission over there back then.
yeah, it probably wasn't big. But he had very quickly deteriorated too, along with his brother. I don't know that they were ever, going out together. I never heard stories of that personally, because it was always hearing about Jerry and not Mike. But so Jerry died of a heart attack in 1999, and then it was shortly after that, Jimmy, the brother who was taking care of Jerry, died in 2002. I don't know what their circumstances were, but I know that he was also a drinker and a smoker. And then in 2006, Mike Quarry died at only 55 years old. And it was I just looked it up. What was it? 2010. Is that what I said when Jack Quarry died?
You said Jack died. Oh yeah, around then. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was the last. He outlived all of these fighting children, except for Bobby, who we didn't really get into, who was just kind of his own entity out there in the wind compared to the others. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
just
man. And you know what's sad is that Mike Quarry ended up suffering from the same fate that Jerry did. He really did. At first, his wife was the one that was mentioning he was like suffering. His moods were changing, his attitude. He was getting very aggressive a lot. Things were happening. He was picking fights at bars and all kinds of things. And then they just noted a gradual change. And I think he noticed it too. Like he was saying, something's wrong with me. I can't because he couldn't remember things. Like you tell him something, couldn't remember. He wasn't able to hold down jobs after a while because of it. Like things got really bad, and eventually, he started taking the same route as Jerry, where he started needing care. He would go wandering into the streets. If you lived in his neighborhood, there was a good chance you might walk into Mike Quarry, who would just give you a random quote, say something like "Life is lived backwards and move forward," or something like that. I forgot what the exact quote was actually. Hold on, let me look at it because it was pretty interesting. Live forward, learn backwards. That's what he would say. Life is live forward and learn backwards. And then he would just kind of stumble off, and you would just kind of look at him stupid, like what the hell just happened? If he didn't call the cops to help him. And it was tragic. It really, really was, because it's the same thing. He just suffered from the same brain CTE and the other issues. And if you read all those quotes that we were talking about that we're referencing from that from the article that Bill Paxton wrote, it gets worse and worse, because you can tell that he probably shouldn't, and there's a gather what I gather from it is that there's a thing in the back of his mind telling him he shouldn't be doing this, but it's almost like his dad pushing him on. And you can hear the way he talks, all I need is one more fight. If I win this, I can do this, I can do that. It's almost like his dad's voicing that for him. You know what I mean? Like that's not really him. And
it almost makes me kind of like skeptical of when Jerry Quarry said, I'm coming back for the money.
Yeah.
Like maybe he really did need money. I'm not questioning that, but I question that was the only motivation.
His dad was probably in his ear telling him, Jerry, look what you can do with this and that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I don't think that was the only motivation. I think that there was definitely a lot.
Well, the first things he did mention too was that he said that he watched, Norton against Bobbick. And I'm pretty sure I was watching Bobbick getting an obliterated. He's like, I'm better than that dude. You know what I mean? He's a top contender. I could whip him.
Well, and you know what though, dude? Dwayne and Rodney Bobbick, that's another, that's yet another kind of instance of families. I don't know that much about their family life, so don't get me wrong there, but I'm talking about the exploitation factor, about constantly getting a fighter pushing a fighter out there despite the fact that like maybe you shouldn't, type of thing.
Totally, man. They had a huge family too. There is a I have a magazine out the search for it somewhere where there's a whole family portrait of the entire Bobbitt clan. There's so many. There's so many brothers. I don't understand how they can live in that house with no heat and all the other stuff that they talked about living in Bolus, Minnesota. But yeah, that definitely bred some toughens. But I mean, like you see them and then you see the old the mother in the middle or the grandmother, whoever it was, and they said Mama Rose was the toughest of them all.
That's always the case. It's always some lady that could kick the shit out of everybody because you need to. We've got a family.
You just see a bunch of just big, burly, redhead, pale dudes all standing around in like the those suits that have the ruffled suits. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it was tragic, man. To go back to that, just to sum it up, like you said, Bobby Quarry was the third brother. He was born years later than both of them. And in that KO magazine article, actually, there's a photo of Jerry and Mike holding up Bobby, who's like couldn't have been more than 5 years old or something, but he's holding up trunks and he's wearing gloves himself. And he's on their shoulders while they're holding him up, while both Jerry and Mike probably just got done training. So he fell into the business. Like you said, he was a journeyman. His only claim to fame is that he fought Tommy Morrison, but he too also suffered from brain damage.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of raises questions that whether or not they had some sort of like genetic predisposition toward, just not having the right brain structure or something. I don't know, but
I'm not sure how he is today, but I know he's still around. So
yeah, I don't know too much about it either. But and I opened up the show talking briefly about the fact that this kind of stuff is even talked about today. But look, dude, I don't want to get too much on a high horse. I will say this, and the reason why I think this is relevant is that with both Mike Quarry and Jerry Quarry, something that we saw with, well, not we, but you could see with both of them at the tail ends of their careers, and something that's even hinted at in that thread, is depression.
Yes.
Depression is one of the hallmarks of what they call, dementia pugilistic dementia, punch drunk, fucked up, whatever you want to call it. But the head trauma, the chronic head trauma that fighters, football players, sometimes baseball players, even soccer players and shit often endure. When you get brain damage, we now know that one of the hallmarks of that is depression, listlessness, seeming like you're out of it, stuff like that. And that's something that both of these guys described a lot. And like I said, I don't want to get too much of a high horse about it, but that's something that we probably should be paying a little bit closer attention to. And then when these fighters are bringing up mental health and stuff like that, like I know it's like really fun to just start poking at them and being like, "This is a bitch and you're this and this," but like, we probably should be paying a little closer attention to that and being a little bit more, maybe sensitive is the wrong word because you say sensitive and people are like, ugh, but a little bit more acutely aware of that.
Especially after, certain people, they're not even worth naming, decided to tweet some nonsense today about what's going on. You know what I mean? I'm not here to judge anybody. Look, I have no problem saying I suffer.
Yeah, I'm talking about the wider, zeitgeist.
I have no problem saying I suffer from mental health, so I can say this right now, man. That shit ain't nothing to joke about. And if any fighter, whether it's Broner, who was easy to pick on, I get it, or Ryan Garcia, who was also easy to pick on, wants to say that they have issues going on or anything like that, I'm not going to say anything except that I just give them support and that they can get the help they need. And that's what everybody should.
It doesn't make you their best friend or their biggest fan. You're not.
And just be, you know what I mean?
You're not the biggest supporter now. You're just being a human, fucking compassionate human being.
And don't be an idiot and be like, "Oh man, I'm going to question this or I need proof of that." Like, who the fuck are you to ask that?
Well, and on top of that, the idea that like this is some shit that was just invented 2 years ago, or that like
I'm just glad it's getting the attention that it needs.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe if this had gotten more attention back in the day, somebody like a Billy Papke wouldn't have killed his wife and then killed himself.
Or Randy Turpin wouldn't have gone off the deep end,
Or yeah, or tried to kill his daughter, then killed himself. Or Kid McCoy wouldn't
Yes.
have like gone on a rampage shooting people and then 15 years later killed himself. You know, like
Goodbye,
Ricky Womack. We just
yeah,
talked
Ricky
about Ricky
Womack,
Womack.
yes. There's
You
a
know what I'm
whole page on BoxRec about fighters who killed themselves. There's a whole page on it.
It's not good. It's not good. And so that also is something not to joke about. But the point is that, you know, applying this to this quarry situation, also, I like to always say when we talk about the true crime stuff that we're not here like, you know, fist pumping at bad shit. We're here discussing it, also hopefully bringing it up in an intelligent way that moves that conversation forward. But either way, the Quarry family, heavy shit, dude. Very eventful.
Man, you know what they made. The thing is, they're both families just remembered generally today. You know, Jerry Quarry is still remembered as fondly as he was back in the day, and credit to them for that. If anything, you know, I mean, their legacies will always live on and be like well preserved in boxing.
Very well said. Very, very well said. Yeah. They're very well remembered in the boxing community overall.
So whether or not they make it into the Hall of Fame should be irrelevant. I don't know if you don't need to have that high horse for them, because honestly, Jerry Quarry will go down as one of the most popular fighters ever, and that's more than enough, I think.
They make it into the Knuckles and Gloves Hall of Fame. Tell you that much.
Hell yeah, man. You know what I mean? Definitely. But
hey, dude,
thank God for all the different things that we had. The book that Carlos Acevedo's book that he wrote, Sport and Blood, because he has an incredible article about Mike Quarry in it. The stuff that you were able to reference from your book about Bonavena, obviously in the tumultuous times of the '60s, and man, and the article that we were able to use, because a lot of that was very helpful for all of us to put this together today. So
totally, yeah, no, and I know that you did your studying up. I did my studying. I appreciate it, dude. It's a lot of fun.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Well, everybody, we appreciate you listening in. We very much appreciate it. If you listened in, by the way, on the podcast apps, go ahead and give us a subscribe. Give us a reply, rating, comment, all those things. Very much appreciate it. If you watched via YouTube, also subscribe. Please leave a comment, nice reply, all those things. Again, appreciated. And also, as far as social media goes, Knuckles and Gloves Podcast is on both Facebook and Instagram. It's also on Twitter, though, where we are individually. It's usually where you're going to find us. Aris is on Twitter as Punch Zone Aris. Me, Patrick Connor. I'm on there as Patrick M. Connor. Check us out there. And Aris, we'll talk soon, bro.
Have a good one, everyone.
What's up, everybody?